Alright, you and I are diving into a story where a commander just shamed a prince, calling him a rat. This kid is usually weak and takes the abuse, but not this time. A murderous aura exploded, nearly crushing the soldier. The prince picked up a simple twig and gave a chilling warning: insults like that are paid for with your life. This story actually starts a bit before that with Prince Callian Lane Caris, the third heir to the continent's most powerful nation. He is weak, humiliated, and left completely alone inside the cold walls of the royal palace. His half-brothers act like he's invisible, while the knights mockingly refer to him as nothing more than a rat. Even the servants are scared to be near him, but what nobody realizes is that everything just changed. Inside that fragile body, it's no longer the young Callian. It's Bern Secretia, a king who lost absolutely everything. In his past life, Bern ruled Secretia with strength and honor until a mysterious object called the Axis of Time triggered an impossible war. Kailus demanded the object, Secretia refused, and the war began way faster than anyone expected, as if they were waiting for an excuse. Bern fought until the bitter end, finally falling to Commander Arson on a devastated battlefield soaked in blood. The mastermind was the Mad King of Kailus. But then Bern woke up 10 years before the war even began. Now pay attention, he's in the body of an enemy prince, and his window of opportunity is closing fast. The original Callian is set to be murdered in just 2 months before he even turns 15, and the queen herself ordered the hit. Bern knows this. He also knows a secret even the loyal servants don't: Callian was actually a mage. 3 mana circles are hidden near the prince's heart, but using them causes pain that could kill him before an assassin arrives. With time running out, Bern makes a choice: no more hiding. He grabs the scissors and cuts his own hair. He finally stops staring at the floor like a coward. And when Plantoon throws a knife at his servant during breakfast, Bern catches it with his bare hand, bleeds, smiles, and quietly sets it down. The second prince is stunned. He's never seen this before. But the next move out on the training grounds is even bigger. Commander Pable, a knight loyal to the family, propping up. Plantoon calls Callian a bastard rat in front of everyone. You and I both know the old Callian would have apologized, but Bern just smiles and picks up a branch. He asks Pable about his duty, and before the commander can even finish his answer, Bern is already airborne. With nothing but that wooden branch, he knocks the trained commander's sword clean out of his hands. Pable drops to his knees and begs for forgiveness in front of his men, swearing he never intended to commit treason. As Pable keeps groveling and begging the prince for his life, Bern merely looks at him with pure contempt. Still pinned to the ground, Pable realizes he will never forget the humiliation from the prince. Jan, the prince's servant, asks with a look of pure shock why someone coming from endurance training is leading a horse. The servant finishes speaking as Bern cheerfully leads a powerful black horse by the reins. Bern hands the reins to Jan, claiming he just found the horse and named it Corvo. Jan just asks where Bern has been. After the chaos with the commander settled, Bern had spotted the horse and asked what was wrong with it. The beast refused to follow any knight's command, as it was truly too fierce and strong for anyone to tame. The prince realized the horse belonged to Plantoon. His servant, Jan, was startled that Bern had taken Plantoon's horse on his own. The prince claims Plantoon said anyone could use it, then whispers to the trainer to keep the incident with Pable a secret. With a shaky voice, Jan fears the second prince will find out, but Bern assures him everything will be fine no matter what happens. Bern then feels a sharp pain in his heart again, startling his 2 vassals. With a hand on his chest, he realizes he overdid it. His servant asks if the training was too much, but the prince just replies that it wasn't. He claims he just enjoyed himself with someone. A secret observer who had been watching quickly leaves before Bern tells Jan to eat. Inside a garden gazebo, a seated figure receives information from another about the recent events. Holding a flower in his hands, he says that even worms squirm when you step on them. He crushes the flower forcefully, stating that no matter how much someone like Bern tries to squirm, he can never change his origins. Tossing the flower aside, he decides it would be more fun to just watch him struggle for now rather than killing him. Trust me, you and I need to see this dinner. Alright, you and I are about to dive into some intense royal drama. Baron couldn't get used to that heavy atmosphere, noting Prince Planche's unusually thoughtful gaze. Baron watched him closely, wondering why Planche looked so disheartened today while he sat there sipping on his wine. Planche worried that the Queen and the Viscount were late because of him, struggling to keep his true emotions off his face. Suddenly, the dining room doors swung open. Everyone stood up immediately, turning their eyes toward the entrance in total silence. Baron caught a familiar scent in the air. He was clearly very pleased with the person finally entering the dining room. It was the Queen, looking stunning in a green dress with her signature baby blue hair. Celody Bryson, the second queen and current ruler of Caius, was the true power behind this entire kingdom. After the previous queen died, Celody took the throne, using her family's influence to dominate the royal knights. With most nobles backing the Briston family, Celody's power was growing more dangerous every single day. Because of this, the third Prince Callian became a total nobody. ignored even by mere commanders. The Viscount entered with the Queen, discussing Pable's compensation while she agreed to pay him off fairly. They finally sat down at the table together. The Queen told the Viscount to stop bothering her with such trivial reports, and he quickly agreed to her demands. Now, pay attention, because the Queen looks at Bern, questioning why she should care about such minor things. Bern just stared back with a cold, serious gaze. The table went silent as everyone watched the events unfold. The Queen then addressed the third prince, Callian, noting that he seemed to have grown quite a bit lately. Callian gave her a slight smile, a reaction that caught the Queen completely off guard. Holding his wine glass, he calmly replied that he hadn't actually grown that much yet. Callian finished with a smile, asserting he would grow much more in the future. The other two princes were absolutely stunned by his confidence. The Queen glared at him, clearly feeling a hint of anger toward his bold response. While the Viscount kept talking with great enthusiasm, Planche shot an angry, sidelong look at Bern, his frustration clearly boiling over. His mother whispered, asking why he hadn't told her anything. Planche was confused, wondering what she was talking about. She explained it was about his horse that refused to obey. At first, Planche didn't even catch her meaning. When he finally understood, Planche turned his face away, looking completely embarrassed by the whole situation. The Queen mentioned he should have told her sooner, but Planche snapped back that she already knew about it. Planche gripped his fork in rage while the Queen pointed out he never mentioned the horse's total lack of respect. He slammed his fork down, declaring that the horse was a useless piece of junk from the start. Planche stood up and announced he was leaving. His mother was shocked by the outburst, calling after him. 3 weeks went by, and the king's birthday arrived. Every vassal was working overtime to make the celebration perfect. A line of horses arrived, carrying massive, expensive gifts for the king. Excitement for the banquet was high, but the people were anxious, wondering if the princes were actually ready for this. Meanwhile, the tailor checked the measurements he had taken earlier for the third prince, Callian. He noticed the numbers were totally different now and couldn't figure out why. You and I need to watch this closely. As the tailor prepared to ask Callian if he was eating well, blood hit the floor. Looking at Prince Callian's face, the tailor was horrified by the sight right in front of him. Prince Callian was bleeding profusely from his nose, looking completely alarmed by the situation. Immediately, all the vassals rushed forward to help the bleeding prince. His servant yelled for a cloth while Callian tried to insist it wasn't actually a big deal. Callian blamed it on a lack of sleep, but his servant, Jan, wasn't having any of it. The tailor interrupted, stating that the bleeding was only the beginning of their serious problems. He added that young Callian had lost a shocking amount of weight, and it was becoming dangerously noticeable on him. The bleeding finally stopped. Callian knew exactly how much weight he had lost lately. Callian smiled to calm them down, claiming he had just been exercising lately. Inside, he realized his stamina was only getting worse, despite all the hard work. Every time he used mana, it hurt. Callian believed something was seriously wrong with his heart. The tailor warned him not to take this lightly, asking if he had undergone a checkup yet. Callian said it wasn't necessary, wondering why his body chose now to fail in front of everyone. The tailor tried to argue, but Callian stood firm. Trust me, you and I need to see what's next. Jan claimed he couldn't just stand by, blabbing that the reason for the bleeding was actually because the prince kept picking his nose. Trust me, this excuse is legendary. He kept going, saying it must have been tough for the prince to admit such a weird and embarrassing personal hobby to everyone. Bern was absolutely floored by what his servant was saying, while the vassals started whispering and gossiping among themselves. Jan wrapped it up by saying the prince is eating and exercising perfectly. So the blood? Yeah, definitely, just because of his little hobby. The tailor actually bought it, since Jan obviously knew the prince better than anyone else in that room. Then Jan looked at Prince Callian and gave him a cheeky wink. Bern, meanwhile, was still standing there in total confusion. Callian flashed back to when Jan was worried about him. He had told his servant that he could use magic, and his health issues were just mana problems. The prince looked stunned, wondering if Jan's master plan was really just to destroy his entire reputation like this. But then relief hit. He realized his servant had actually found a clever, if humiliating, excuse to get them out of that mess. The tailor then repeated his promise that he would have the clothes fixed up exactly like they had discussed before. He looked pretty stressed out though, since there wasn't exactly a whole lot of time left to finish the work. Jan assured him the prince had other appointments first, giving them plenty of time. The tailor left relieved, while Jan whispered to get the prince's attention. With a slight tremor in his voice, the prince asked Bern if the day they had all been waiting for was finally here. Bern stayed quiet, his mind racing with anxiety about the storm that was coming for them next. He knew they had to find Mage Ellen. No matter the mage's health, this news was going to leak throughout the entire palace soon. They needed to find Ellen at any cost before the news broke. Pay attention, you and I are about to see things get intense. When lunch rolled around, they headed to the designated spot only to find out it was cancelled because of an urgent matter. Instead of a big group meal, the plan was replaced by individual meetings with every person involved. The prince was thrown off by the sudden shift, wondering how there would even be enough time to meet everyone one-on-one. Bern thought a group meeting would be way more effective, but he kept his head down and followed closely behind the butler. They reached the first chamber, and Bern felt a wave of nervousness. He definitely wasn't expecting a private sit-down like this. The door swung open, and a voice told the prince to enter. Inside, he saw a man sitting on a sofa, totally buried in a newspaper. It was the King of Sires, Roman Lurin Sires, and he didn't even look up from his reading for a second. The third prince bowed deeply to his majesty. He slowly straightened up, trying to catch the king's eye, but the man didn't budge. He was shocked. The king didn't care at all that he was there. Check this out, that's one cold-hearted father. Bern thought to himself that even if he wasn't always perfect with etiquette, the king's attitude was just straight-up rude. The king finally spoke, but only to tell him to sit down without ever actually moving the newspaper from his face. He half-heartedly said happy 38th birthday and asked how he was. Without looking up, the king claimed he looked well, which totally stunned the prince. The prince thought back to all the vassals who were actually worried about his failing health recently. He knew that even the random attendants passing by were aware he had made a lightning-fast recovery. The prince realized why the king wanted individual meetings. If he met all three sons together, he'd actually have to concentrate on a real conversation. For the king, doing it one by one was just way easier. Spending time with sons who wanted to celebrate him was a waste. Bern found the customs of this family to be incredibly strange. A father who didn't care, and a first prince who was basically a ghost who didn't give a damn about anything. Then you had the second prince, no manners, smelling like a brewery, and treating his people like garbage. What a mess, right? Just as Bern finished that thought, someone walked in. The king sounded seriously annoyed when he muttered that she was finally here. It was the queen. She just shrugged it off with a mocking tone, saying that these things simply happen sometimes. As she walked in with that smug, sarcastic smile, Bern realized she was powerful enough to completely disdain the king himself. The prince just smiled. He knew for a fact that someone in this room was actively trying to kill him. As a vassal announced the start of the event, Bern scanned the room, trying to figure out who would send the assassin. When the prince appeared before the crowd, people started whispering to each other that he looked like a completely different person. In contrast, the second Prince Planche looked totally wasted. The king and queen watched him, with the queen scoffing that nothing would change. The crowd was just making noise to her as she sipped on her wine. But the king noticed. He could tell that unlike the past, something about the prince had definitely changed. Then the third prince was announced and he entered the hall, leaving the crowd stunned. Trust me, you and I are about to see everything change. Let's dive into the story of a prince who looks just like Sisfanian. His new look demanded attention, especially since he finally cut the bangs that used to hide his entire face. A glowing red brooch matched his eyes perfectly, serving as a bold declaration that he would never stay in the shadows again. Seeing everyone's shocked reaction, the prince just gave a happy, confident smile. His servant Jan whispered a question about the heavy stairs, but quickly realized the answer himself while Prince Bern waited for him to explain the situation. With a bright smile, Jan asked if it was his newfound beauty, mentioning Sin would love this look, which actually caught Bern off guard. Bern claimed the stairs were just for the jewels, remembering the hard work Tor put into crafting each piece. He told Jan to be grateful they only used some, because if he had worn every piece available, things would be way more chaotic, though Jan insisted the prince looked absolutely incredible regardless. Walking through the hall, Bern asked if Jan's family lived in Kailus, the capital city, surprising his loyal servant. Jan explained his father and sister went home, while the rest of the family stayed behind in the capital. The prince then asked if they would ever visit the royal palace. Jan said they would with an invitation, but Bern stopped and stared at him intently. Jan quickly changed the subject to Raven waiting in the garden, and Bern realized his servant was clearly avoiding any talk about his own family. The prince figured there were just some things better left unsaid for now. Bern agreed they would wait for the right time, then mentioned someone he truly wanted to meet, which caught his loyal servant completely off guard. Bern asked if he knew why this hall was called Siegfried, and Jan confirmed he knew the history. It was named after the legendary war hero and first patriarch, Duke Quitros Han Siegfried. Even with massive power, the Siegfried family remained the only elite house in the kingdom of Kailus. For 500 years, they stayed loyal to the crown, never wavering in their duty to defend the Sisfanian lands. Bern remembered being moved by that history, while Jan asked if this was the person the prince wanted to find. Now watch this. Before Jan could even finish his question, a loud, booming laugh suddenly echoed across the entire hall. A man joked about the classic summer nights at Siegfried, while Jan pointed toward the prince. There he was, Duke Slimmen Hanegried, an incredibly elegant man with long hair, a sharp beard, and a truly magnetic smile. Bern felt a sense of respect, admiring families that held on to such deep, enduring loyalty for generations. Prince Bern began leaking a bit of magic, testing to see if the Duke would notice. Slimane immediately felt the shift in energy and turned his gaze directly toward the third prince standing there. After locking eyes, Simon realized where the magic originated, and Bern cut the flow, feeling completely satisfied. As expected, the Duke caught on instantly, even though Bern only released a tiny fraction of his power. You saw that too, right? Yan noticed the Duke's interest, but Bern knew a master swordsman from the continent's top 5 would simply never miss a sign like that. Bern told himself it was still too early for a real confrontation. He told Yan to play it cool and pretend they hadn't noticed, then slipped away from the Duke's sight. Slimane watched them walk away, fully aware that an incredible power was hiding deep inside that young prince. Soon, the king raised a toast to the guests, inviting everyone to enjoy the night in the name of the kingdom. Seizing the moment, Bern and Yan used a hidden rope to drop out the window and head toward the garden. Waiting there was Bern's horse, an animal famous for being completely wild and impossible for anyone to control. Yet, under Bern's aura, the horse was perfectly calm, though Yan warned the prince not to trust the beast's act. But watching the horse behave so well, Yan finally admitted the animal was actually pretty smart. When Yan asked about the main gate, Bern agreed, noting that nobody would expect them to just walk out. Approaching the gate, they saw a loud commotion involving the guards and a mysterious visitor who claimed to have traveled a very long way. Even after hearing his story, the guard refused him entry and politely asked the man to leave. Bern watched the whole scene unfold, his eyes widening as he recognized exactly who the visitor was. The visitor, Ellen Manisol, calmly asked if a lack of an invitation was the only thing stopping him. Trust me, you're going to want to see what's next, because the guards just realized they're facing a literal living legend right now. Alright, you and I are about to see what happens when a legendary mage gets disrespected by some guards. Elon just smiles under his hood, hitting back with a sharp remark. What a joke. So Kailus judges its guests based on how they look. Listening from the sidelines, Bern is absolutely stunned by the sheer audacity of the mage's words. He realizes right then that you really can't judge people based on their clothes. But it's not just talk. Bern senses that Elon is actually looking for any excuse to skip out on entering Kailus. Elon turns his horse to leave, and Bern knows he can't let this chance slip away. He has to follow him. His servant quickly reminds him of the king's direct orders. Nobody is allowed to leave during the festival. Period. As Elon starts riding away from the city, Bern knows they'll lose him if they don't move. He orders Yan to do whatever it takes to stall those guards. He charges full speed toward the gate, leaving Yan behind. The poor servant is still shouting desperately for his prince to come back. Bern just pushes his horse faster. At the gate, the guards scream for the prince to halt his horse immediately. Now watch this move, this isn't your average prince. His horse literally leaps over the soldiers and bolts for the exit. The guards are left in the dust, completely shocked by the horse's insane speed. Screaming at the top of their lungs, the guards announce that the prince has escaped Kailus. Everyone scrambles for their horses, desperate to catch up and stop him immediately. Yan is standing there dazed, wondering how on earth he's supposed to help the prince in this mess. Then he remembers the mission. Stop the guards, no matter the cost. He hypes himself up. He's Prince Callian's attendant, and his only job is to protect his master at all costs, no matter what happens to him. In a total power move, he orders the guards to stop. He claims Duke Siegfried personally allowed Callian to leave. A guard snaps back, asking who he thinks he is to be throwing the Duke's name around. That's when he lets his hair down, finally revealing his true identity. He's Soyan Siegfried, the Duke's very own eldest son and heir. A little later, the sound of massive, booming laughter fills the room. You and I both know that feeling of being roasted by your own dad. Poor Yan is dying of embarrassment. He tries to protest, but his father, the Duke, is still doubled over laughing. He can't believe his son actually pulled off such a clever stunt. He's playfully teasing him just like any proud father would with his child. The Duke admits that Yan actually made a pretty smart call, but Yan disagrees, worried this will ruin the delicate relationship between the Duke and the king. Surprisingly, the Duke says he won't even ask about the details. Yan is stunned by how calm he is. He repeats that he won't push for answers, but internally, the Duke is calculating every move. If the prince gets help from the Siegfried family, he might start becoming wary of their support. A relationship where he receives help but faces no punishment is the same as acknowledging a friendly bond between our family and the prince. Briston will definitely complain, but they'll likely just bury this entire incident to save face. Meanwhile, Bern is still hot on the mage's trail. He finally catches up to Elon near a large fountain. Elon notices him and jokes that the prince doesn't look like he's there to yell about the missing invitation. The mage asks why the third prince is wasting time following a random old man. Bern remembers the legend. Reach the 7th circle, and you start aging in reverse. Looking at him, it seems the legends are true. Bern notes it's getting late and asks Elon to return. Elon cryptically replies that when he tried to open that door, the threshold just felt way too high. Bern doesn't quite catch the hidden meaning, but he knows he's out of options to help him right now. Bern tells him he went for a closed door when another one was standing wide open. He asks where the mage hid the invitation he was supposed to receive. Standing face to face with the mage, Bern admits he was blocking the wind and forgot to clear the threshold. He truly hadn't expected the guard's mistake. The mage is floored. He can't tell if the prince is being purely honest or just incredibly bold. Elon lets out a small smile. This prince is actually much more amusing than he expected. Looking at him, Elon remembers that Bern's gaze didn't feel like a 14-year-old's. Then, he looks down at the prince's hand. Trust me, we're about to find out exactly what this mage sees in our young prince. Alright, you and I are about to watch as a mysterious mage pushes this prince to his absolute breaking point. Bern has no idea what is happening and tries to figure out Ellen's true plan. But the mage is already channeling magic, trying to wake the sleeping energy inside the prince's body. Suddenly, Bern feels that brutal, familiar stabbing in his heart, as his own mana begins to react. Ellen's power flows in, but Bern's energy violently slams against it like a massive tidal wave, triggering a blast that hurls them apart. The horses panic, and Bern's chest feels like it is burning. Ellen whispers that even with the doors shut tight, the wind cannot be stopped entirely. Bern realizes the mage has already seen through the hidden, truly broken state of his body. He finally admits it. The mage is right, he really cannot use his mana at all. Ellen ponders the situation. He knows mana isn't the real problem and wonders if Bern is actually, truly clueless about the cause. The mage watches Bern's fist and completes his reasoning. Now, pay attention here. This look tells us exactly how high the stakes really are for them. The Kailus clan absolutely hated mages. Yet the great mage Ellen came here on his own with every intention of deceiving them right from the start. Instead, he finds himself following a young prince toward a destination he cannot even predict. Ellen asks why the prince summoned him. Bern, still gasping for air, truly struggles to find his voice. He knows a mage will spot any lie. So Bern decides to speak from the heart. Dismounting his horse, the prince slowly walks toward the great mage and asks for his real name. Then, Bern delivers the kicker. He believes his life is going to be in danger soon. Ellen watches the prince speak, thinking how the third prince is hated by everyone and is just a prince surrounded by enemies. Suddenly, a spell snaps into place around them, its terrifying speed catching Bern off guard. As Ellen jumps off his horse, Bern wonders if he has just been trapped in a silent spell. He is stunned by the mage's silent casting. Ellen then looks him in the eye and asks for his true objective. Is he just trying to stop the disaster, or does he want to kill the root cause? Bern says he is just trying to survive for now, which leaves the mage completely speechless. But then he adds his real goal is to destroy the source. Stick with me, he just admitted he will take the throne if it is truly what he needs to do. Ellen smiles. To this dying prince, the throne is just another tool he really needs to reach his final goal. This prince looks like Sisfanian, and he is going to need the mage's help to survive. The mage is absolutely thrilled by this entire turn of events. He asks Bern for a proper, formal invitation to finally serve him. Without any hesitation, the prince drops to one knee. He introduces himself as Callian Lane Caris and officially greets his new mentor, Master Ellen Manisil. Looking at the kneeling boy, Ellen makes a silent vow to keep him alive. The scene shifts to Jan, who is talking to his father, asking if he is certain his identity is truly a secret. The Duke confirms he handled everything, and Jan mentions that if anyone had truly recognized him, he never could have remained there as a servant. As the Duke continues to ramble, a memory suddenly flashes through Jan's mind. In a moment of distress, he asks about Leah. The sudden question about her well-being makes the Duke stop dead in his tracks. He explains that Leah is thriving as the head of the family position Jan walked away from. The Duke stands up and stretches, telling Jan he is always welcome back, though he sighs, thinking he won't see him for a long time. Jan keeps his head down, correcting him that they will see each other again in just 3 months. Duke Siegfried is stunned. He asks his son if he really plans to quit his position as the prince's personal servant. Jan stays silent, head bowed. He simply says he will be turning 15 very soon. His father just watches him in silence before finally calling his son's name one last time. He asks if Jan remembers the Siegfried family nickname, and Jan nods. Trust me, you and I won't want to miss what the elephants of sires do next. Alright. You and I are diving into a world where power hides behind the shadows of a throne. They are the kings of animals, creatures, even beasts fear to touch. The Duke finishes with a heavy look. Jan starts to ask why his father brought this up so suddenly, but his words are cut short. His father pulls him into a tight embrace, whispering that their name holds immense weight. He tells Jan to chase every single dream he has. Jan clings to his father's arm, his heart racing with pure joy after hearing those words. Suddenly, the Duke playfully squeezes his neck, teasing him for being such a worrywart. Jan just laughs and begs him to let go already. Under the glow of the night, father and son simply enjoy each other's company together. Ready to be a servant again, Jan straightens up and addresses his father formally as Duke Siegfried. The Duke scoffs at the formality and tells him to scram immediately. Jan just bows deeply before his father, promising they will meet again very soon. From the bench, the Duke just watches as the boy walks away. He mutters that Jan's stubbornness is final proof that he is truly a Siegfried through and through. He thinks back to the prince radiating magic in the hall, stunned by how much the boy has grown. Looking up at the massive full moon, the Duke wonders what the prince is actually plotting this time. Morning breaks with a sky as blue as the ocean, just as horses begin to approach the gates. Now watch this. A carriage arrives with a crest so legendary that people here can't believe their eyes, 7 red flowers and a silver cane. A woman whispers that Elon Manisil has officially ended his contract with the Reen family. The man asks why Elon would come to Kailus, wondering if the recent chaos forced his hand. The woman replies that he would have left ages ago if not for the king. She then asks if it is because of those dark rumors they heard before. As they gossip about Elon Manisil's son, the carriage door finally swings open and someone steps onto the ground. It is Elon Manisil himself, dressed in sharp black and white, with his hair flowing loose. He steps down with a smirk, thinking his new student really went all out to welcome him. He remembers the young prince's strict order to arrive at exactly 9 a.m. He was told he must walk through the open doors at that precise moment. Elon wonders if the prince plans to take on the Brizan family. If so, things are about to get messy. Bern waits for the perfect moment to present the mage and flip the entire political game upside down. A man approaches, shocked at the mage's sudden visit. A group of vassals joins him, informing the master that His Highness is already waiting for his arrival. Inside, the king is having tea with an attendant, questioning the latest shocking report. The king sits across from the mage, confused as to why Elon would suddenly request a place to stay. He asks one more time to be sure. Does the great mage really want to live in Kailus? With great tranquility, the mage replies that he needs a place to stay in Kailus. The king then ponders if this sudden request is a way to compete with Sele. The king knew he needed Elon's power, but he never expected the mage to offer it up so willingly. You and I need to pay attention here. As he sips his tea, Elon mentions that he saw something strange in the square last night. He says that last night, he spotted a mysterious black cat with piercing red eyes. The king listens, puzzled. The mage explains that this cat was incredibly smart, and he wants to teach it, but the poor cat has no home. When the king asks what he intends to teach it, Elon's answer is simple. He wants to teach the cat magic, obviously. He also wants to build an environment the creature would actually enjoy living in. To make this happen, Elon plans to support the master of the house and set up his own residence. The king is stunned. It seems Elon already knows everything happening within these palace walls. He looks the mage in the eye and asks if he can truly handle everything. Elon knows that with Callian as his disciple, the Brizan family is powerless to stop him from helping the prince. He tells the king that this entire plan was actually Callian's clever invitation. The king slams his hand down on his leg, rises quickly, and agrees to provide the room. With a subtle, knowing smile, Elon thinks the situation is already a mess, so nothing can really get worse. The king then says he is curious. For one reason, he heard the boy was not special. Not special? Elon scoffs. In his mind, even the prince's terrible health is exceptionally special in its own way. It has reached a point where finding anything normal about the prince is a real challenge. The king notes the boy's many fears. But Elon? Well, you and I know he is not letting go. Alright, let's dive into a story where a king literally has no clue how sick his own son is. Our mage, Elon, is stunned that His Majesty only knows rumors about Prince Callian. Elon cuts the king off with a sharp question. He asks if the king is truly blind to the prince's actual condition. He pushes further, asking if the king even understands how vital his own heirs are to the kingdom. The king just stares back, dead serious. In that look, Elon finds his answer. This father knows absolutely nothing about his sons. Elon spits out a hard truth, saying that while some call indifference a remedy, he knows being too busy is just a weak excuse for neglecting his son. The king is frozen. He can't believe the sheer audacity and courage this mage has to speak to him like that. He claims he'll overlook Elon's total lack of respect only because he's the boy's teacher. Then, as he heads for the door, the king scoffs that he shouldn't have to explain himself, insisting he values his sons, especially Callian. He claims the boy is precious, all while his hand is already turning the doorknob to leave. Now pay attention, because Elon is done playing nice. He snaps his fingers, instantly trapping the king in a silent spell that cuts the world off around them. Elon locks eyes with the stunned monarch and tells him to quit stalling with pretty lies. The king demands to know how he dared use magic in the palace. Unfazed, Elon begins describing Callian's symptoms in brutal detail. Parched lips, labored breathing, skin turning a ghostly blue, with purple bruising visible right under his fingernails. His clothes were thrown on in a rush. Looking at him, it's clear the prince has lost a massive amount of weight. He can barely even stand up anymore. Every time he closes his eyes, the entire world starts spinning. The king is visibly shaken by these cold, hard facts. Elon warns him stay a spectator, and you will lose everything. Meanwhile, a maid approaches Jan, who's standing guard right outside the prince's bedroom. She mentions it's nearly lunch, and the prince still hasn't had his tea. Jan takes the tray, promising to keep a close watch on the boy's cough. He steps inside the quiet room, and finds the prince still buried deep under his blankets. The boy looks exhausted and dangerously thin. Jan sighs, thinking about how much of a toll yesterday took on him. You and I both know Jan is about to jump out of his skin. Elon suddenly appears behind him, asking if the prince is still asleep. Jan finally senses someone there, but his brain can't even process how the mage got inside. Panic hits him like a truck. He tosses the tea tray into the air and starts yelling at Elon for teleporting in like a ghost. Jan demands to know why Elon is acting like this. Elon calmly points out that strangers aren't allowed in without permission. So you just teleported in because you weren't invited? Jan asks, completely baffled. The mage corrects him it was a dimensional rift, which is way harder. Jan pulls himself together and tries to kick him out, worried about the prince's health. But before he can finish, Elon leans in close. He asks Jan if he really doesn't recognize him. He reminds Jan that he arrived in Reen years ago. Did you really think I wouldn't know you just because you've grown up? Then, Elon drops a nickname, Baby Elephant. Jan is absolutely stunned. How could he possibly know that? Jan's father had promised his identity was safe, but here he is, exposed in seconds. He can't believe his secret was blown this fast. Suddenly, Prince Bern wakes up, cutting through the tension. He groggily asks just how long he's been out. Jan quickly tells him he has a visitor. Bern sits up, wondering who could possibly be in his room. He spots Elon and immediately calls him teacher. Elon doesn't waste time, handing over a small red pouch filled with something mysterious. Bern pulls the string to peek inside, asking his teacher what this could be. A few small pellets tumble into his palm. Elon tells him to take one every single day, no exceptions. Is this medicine? Elon explains that the prince is actually dealing with two major issues. First, his mana is totally out of control. Second, his body is wasting away at a terrifying speed. Bern is impressed. Even without a word, his teacher saw exactly what was going on with him. Elon asks if he still has the power of the blessing. Bern confirms, explaining it gives him healing and magic affinity. But there's a catch. Lately, it feels like even that healing power has completely vanished. He remembers an old injury and asks Elon, could there be something wrong with my heart? Elon gets serious. He asks if Bern ever thought that combo of powers was strange. The prince falls silent. Bern admits he's wondered if the blessing was meant to protect his heart, the very source of his mana. Elon nods, confirming the boy's theory. That blessing power is exactly what's keeping his heart beating. And trust me, you and I should stay tuned, because that blessing never actually disappeared. Stick with me, you and I are about to dive into a royal conspiracy much deeper than anyone expected. Curious, the prince asks what is wrong. What if the blessing is actually being used at its limits elsewhere? Ellen's theory stuns the young prince. He realizes the blessing is so busy fighting for his life that it cannot even heal minor wounds. Frightened, Bern asks if it is poison. The mage is terrified, saying that if not for the blessing, the prince would have been dead long ago. The prince hears Ellen explain that fighting such deadly toxins puts immense pressure on his failing internal system. The healing power is already at its limit. Plus, Bern tried to use mana while in that fragile state. Because of that, his heart rejected the mana use entirely. Bern starts thinking deeply about what is truly happening to this body. Callian was originally marked for assassination, but he was already poisoned long before Bern ever possessed his royal body. This was clearly not a last-minute plan. Filled with rage, Bern wonders why they would hang a poor child who was going to die anyway. Ellen senses the intense, boiling rage coming from the young prince. This bloodlust is not normal for a 14-year-old. Ellen wonders what he really is. Bern interrupts the mage, pointing at the bag. That must be the antidote. Holding a pill, the wizard confirms it was rushed, but should definitely work. Now watch this part closely. Bern stares at Ellen and asks what happens if he decides to swallow the poison and the antidote at the same time while holding the pill up. Stunned, Ellen warns that taking both will only delay the inevitable deadly effects. That is enough. Ellen asks if he knows the culprit. Bern says he already has a clue. He believes the morning tea is the true source, since he consumes it in front of everyone while drinking entirely alone. Did the original Callian notice the poison and stop drinking it? Bern realizes that might be why they decided to murder him. Bern knows the situation changed after he possessed the body, so he has no clue how they will try to eliminate him next. He tells Ellen that until the culprit is found, everything must remain a secret. The wizard asks if that is truly the only reason. Bern explains that exposing the tea would put Jan and his other loyal vassals at high risk, and he wants to avoid that entirely. The prince says the culprit has been acting totally normal, clearly confident that they will never be caught. Ellen sighs, telling him the baby elephant will be just fine. Bern is confused by the reference, but the wizard says to ignore it. Regardless, The wizard says he understands Bern's situation and asks what the next steps in his master plan will be. Now, listen, Bern recalls his father saying that to gain a person's trump card, you must first offer something big in return. I remember you now, father. Bern asks Ellen to escort him out of the palace tomorrow. The next morning begins with frantic shouting across the royal halls. Voices demand Prince Planche wake up immediately. The door bursts open as someone rushes into the prince's bedroom in a massive hurry. The servants, still trying to wake the prince, are promptly kicked out. She rips back the bed curtains with a violent, sudden snap. You are late for your engagements. Planche is just sitting on the bed, shirtless and exhausted. The queen is instantly stunned by the overwhelming smell of alcohol on him. She asks if he still cannot compose himself, even after being strictly forbidden from drinking at the plaza ceremony recently. Calmly, Planche picks up a glass of water beside his bed and asks the queen exactly why she has come to see him. He tells her to simply answer and then leave, making the queen bite her lip in absolute, silent rage. She reveals that Callian has chosen the 7th Circle Mage, Ellen Manisil, to be his official royal mentor. While he drinks his water, she adds that the aristocrats are already starting to waver. Showing zero interest, the second prince shrugs it off. The queen glares furiously, ordering him not to waste every single royal resource she invested in him. She orders him to get ready now. All eyes are on you today. Do not disappoint me. With that, the queen turns around and finally leaves the bedroom. Furious with the situation, Planche hurls his glass violently against the floor. Trust me, you and I are going to want to see the bloodbath that follows this cliffhanger next time. Stick with me. This story kicks off with a furious command and a haunting vision of Prince Callian's piercing red eyes. The second prince is absolutely fuming while the rest of the royal family parades through the streets, soaking up the kingdom's cheers. The king waves back at his adoring fans, but inside the carriage, the queen stays silent, just watching the excited crowd. Right behind them, the 3 princes ride in looking totally elegant. A little kid on his dad's shoulders is hyped to see the royalty, and his father points out the prince riding in the back as the real star. That's Prince Callian, wearing striking red clothes that make his unique eyes look even more beautiful. Callian's servant, who is leading the horse, calls out to him with a worried look, asking if his royal health is actually doing okay today. He's relieved to see the prince looking way better than he did just 24 hours ago. With a calm smile, the prince tells him it's just because he finally got some good rest. He knows the truth. It's because he took that antidote yesterday, and the intense pain in his heart has finally faded. The servant lists off the busy schedule, a parade, riding, then a ball, but Callian just laughs and says he worries way too much. He insists he's feeling fine and can handle all these royal events without breaking a sweat. But then, a mysterious hooded man appears, hiding in the shadows of an alley near the crowd. The prince spots him and instantly freezes. He tries to recognize the face because he's never seen these people around before. Memories flash back to the war that took his life and the brave man who saved him in that timeline. It's the exact same person standing in that alley right now. The prince is stunned, wondering if that's really Kyrie. Now pay attention here, because he's certain it's Kyrie, and even his horse Bern senses him. What on earth could Kyrie possibly be doing in Caris? The horse starts pulling toward Kyrie's hiding spot, but the servant grips the reins tight, keeping the horse on the path while the prince gives the order to keep moving. As the hooded men slip away, the servant looks back, wondering if he missed something important in that alley. Bern watches them go, so the prince pets his horse to calm him down, whispering with a smile that he felt it too. But we can't go to him yet, he thinks, as the figures vanish from sight. Callian flashes back to the day he died, vividly remembering Kyrie's final smile as he sacrificed everything to save the prince's life. As the royals head down the red carpet, a man steps forward to give them a formal greeting. This is Melier Paloon, a big-shot shop owner who's organized an equestrian show to replace the Roma family's event. Callian tries to stay detached, knowing this exact event was what originally dragged him into a completely useless and exhausting war of nerves. He remembers that in his past, Prince Randall was badly injured, and Baron Paloon ended up hanged on this very day. Meanwhile, Paloon leads the way with a huge smile, showing the royal family to the special seats he has prepared for them. The prince looks around and spots the chandelier. That's the one that's supposed to fall and crush Prince Randall. Callian finds it suspicious that the guards haven't double-checked something that massive. Okay, I know what you're thinking. How did the knights miss this? Well, Callian is also wondering about that annoying commander right now. As Paloon leads them inside, Callian actually wonders if he should give the man a chance to live. The prince knows Paloon would never miss an opportunity to kiss up to the king. Meanwhile, his servant tells him to call if he needs anything. Callian suddenly speaks up, saying those chandeliers above look a little bit sketchy. He just walks away and tells Paloon to go check them out. Paloon is absolutely shocked by the prince's weird request. He stares at the chandelier, totally confused, just as the show kicks off with horses and riders performing insane acrobatics. With his hands squeezed tight, someone watches the show, dreaming of the day when all this glory belongs to him. It's Paloon, and he's thrilled to be this close to the king. He's worked so hard and can't let this chance slip away. Suddenly, something behind him catches his eye. It's Prince Callian, looking pretty bored with the whole flashy performance. Paloon remembers the prince's warning and decides he'd better go check those ropes. When he gets his hands on the ropes, Paloon nearly jumps. They are frayed and practically seconds away from snapping. He realizes that if the prince hadn't spoken up, the resulting accident would have definitely sealed his own death warrant. While he looks at the prince, Paloon can't help but wonder how he even knew about the rope's condition. Paloon figures the prince is just incredibly sharp, knowing exactly how to play the situation to his own advantage. But trust me, you and I are about to see that being the Romain's enemy is a very dangerous game. Stick with me here. Poon notices the second prince, stunned that Planton refuses to look away from him. Meanwhile, Prince Randall watches Poon with a cold stare, while the arrogant Planton calls him a worthless little insect. Downstairs, the host continues the show with joy. But up in the royal box, the atmosphere is turning icy. Planton declared that the smell of Callian's mother's dirty blood made him feel nauseous. Everyone present heard the insult and stood there in absolute shock. This even caught the attention of King Roma, who usually ignores the princes. Callian appears completely devastated by his brother's words. But honestly, he is smirking inside. Planton just opened his mouth at the worst possible time. Callian never expected his brother to be this useful. The king turns away, leaving Celicia to handle the fallout alone. Behind her fan, Silesia is fuming. She specifically warned Planton to keep his mouth shut, yet here we are. She shoots her son a murderous glare, but Prince Randall remains the picture of calm amidst the entire mess. This terrifies the queen. Did her son do this on purpose? Of all days, why did it have to be today? Rumors spread quickly that Planton had uttered unforgivable words right in the presence of the king. The nobles are worried. They can't openly support Planton now that Callian has won the loyalty of the mages. Stick with me, here it is now possible. Callian becomes the heir. The people can no longer stay silent. The time to choose sides is coming fast. Finally, the royal spectacle comes to an end without further drama. Randall managed to avoid a scene, and the king surprisingly didn't punish Planton for his blatant lack of respect. Callian knows things are working in his favor, but Silesia seems oddly calm, even though her plan is totally ruined. As Callian watches the queen, he starts to wonder if she's the true mastermind behind everything. Visions of his past life come rushing back. A man asks what he thought about the accident he just prevented. Bern guessed it was a hit designed to eliminate one of the three princes. What other reason could there be? He asked his question, but the man didn't answer. It was Callian's brother, challenging him to a high-stakes wager. Poon said he had lost so many times he couldn't track his debt. During chess, Callian's brother dropped a hint. He asked if the accident seemed staged, almost like a loud warning that the royals were now targets. The Melier Merchant Guild was the second largest in the whole kingdom. So, for Renan Roman, master of the top guild, taking the Melier out of the picture would be huge. Prince Callian asks his servant what the most important business of the Poon Merchant Guild actually was. Ian says they are famous for diamond mines. Now here's the kicker you and I need to see. Without Poon, the Romans take over. Prince Callian had originally planned to retreat after saving Poon's life, but now, he's going to make Poon pay for the trouble. Elsewhere, the merchant is shaking like a leaf. Poon tells his servant to clear his entire schedule, which is shocking since missing the royal ball is social suicide. He fakes being traumatized by Planton's cruelty, so his servant will do exactly as he is told. He says that's why he's skipping today's events. Meanwhile, the palace staff is busy cleaning up for the festivities. Back in his chambers, the king looks deeply troubled. Everything that happened today is weighing heavily on his mind. He remembers the mage's warning. If he continues like this, his losses will only start to grow. Planton's cruel words also haunt him, that disgusting comment about the smell of Callian's mother's blood. Memories flood the king's mind. He sees a red-haired woman softly calling his name from the past. It was Callian's mother, the king's former wife, on her deathbed. Suddenly, someone rushes into the room and startles him. The messenger announces that the queen is demanding an immediate audience with his majesty. Silesia doesn't wait. She marches right in as a servant offers tea, trying to maintain some level of royal decorum. The queen demands to know if he has a guest, as she wasn't informed of any visitors today. The king dismisses the servant and the tea with a wave. He tells Silesia to speak quickly, clearly annoying her. King Roma stares her down and asks why she has come here. As she sits, Silesia declares, House Roma will take full responsibility. It's shocking to see her humble herself like this. She is clearly prioritizing her son's reputation now. The king brings his hand to his chin, silently questioning her responsibility. Tell me, had she really not lost any of her insolence? All right. You and I are jumping into the aftermath of the parade where Celeste tells the king the event was impressive. She suggests Baron Paloon deserves a big reward for organizing it. The king notes she has obviously put a lot of thought into this matter. Hiding behind her fan, she offers to hand over House Roman's exclusive supplier rights for the royal stables directly to Baron Paloon himself. She flashes a smile. The The king is stunned, shocked she would ever walk away from such a massive gold mine of an investment. He remembers what the mage Manhwa told him earlier. The mage warned him that the queen would sacrifice something to stop the bleeding, but she is still not ready to pull her knights out of the palace just yet. He explains that she will offer a bribe disguised as a fair reward. The mage tells him to take the deal and act like he is willing to turn a blind eye to her schemes. The king calms down and decides that he and Planche will walk into the ballroom together as a show of unity tonight. The queen is caught off guard, but she is absolutely thrilled by the unexpected news. Grinning, she tells the king that their son will be overjoyed by this gesture of royal favor. Just like that, House, Roman, and Planche enter the party together, while Paloon is named the new exclusive supplier for the crown. Everyone realizes Celeste is just playing damage control to save her son. No one expected House Roman to take such a massive hit like this. The queen is finally paying for Planche's stupidity. Trust me, you and I can see Callian is finally becoming a threat she can no longer ignore. Back in Callian's room, he and his servant Ian are totally speechless. Staring at a mountain of gifts, Callian jokes that people are always incredibly fast when it comes to switching their loyalties. Ian asks what to do with the loot, but the prince is just happy watching Planche and the Romans lose their power. Callian refuses to let traitors buy his favor and orders Ian to send everything back, except for the gifts from the Arcane Enclave and Baron Paloon themselves. As he heads for the door, he tells them to keep a list of exactly who sent what. Just as he is leaving, one very specific gift catches his eye. It is a massive, glowing necklace covered in deep red jewels. The sight leaves the prince and every servant in the room completely breathless. Callian asks if this is meant for a horse. He finds the design weird and wonders what Ian told the sender. Ian says he only mentioned the prince likes Raven. It is definitely one of the most unexpected gifts they have seen. Callian realizes it is jewelry for the horse, but nothing for the master. He feels like he is being tested. If he keeps it, he is essentially letting the sender settle a massive life debt. They would just send another treasure later and call it even. But the prince smirks, knowing it won't be that simple. He is not letting them off easy. He wants more than just a shiny rock. Callian tells Ian to find out the price of the necklace and send the cash to Paloon. Ian asks if they are actually buying it. The prince says no, because a piece this unique is priceless. Pointing at a carnivorous plant, Callian says it wins the award for the most original gift of the bunch. Ian checks the tag. It is a gift from the Arcane Enclave. The prince laughs at the wizard's weird taste. He picks up the note while his servant explains that this magical plant is actually extremely rare and special. It is a flower that releases glowing pollen after it dies. It is a favorite for herbologists. Callian looks confused at first, but then something clicks. Now, you and I know that look, he's got a plan. Ian asks if he should just ship it back to the wizards. The prince says no, they are keeping it. While the maid cleans up, you can see a dark idea forming. Suddenly, Ian lets out a cry that startles the maid. Ian asks if the prince is okay. Callian calmly replies that he is fine, and the cup just slipped from his hand. The tea spills everywhere. Ian tells one of the maids to get over there and clean up the mess. While she scrubs his clothes, the prince notices the tea has soaked into the magical flower. It is partially covered in the liquid. Ian worries the tea might kill the plant. The prince loudly declares it will be fine since the tea definitely was not poisoned. His words send a shock through the maid. He tells them to leave the plant alone since he has taken a liking to it. Later, two men are out riding and one thanks the other. It is the prince and the mage. The mage says he could never say no while the prince is out risking his life. He notes that Callian looks way happier outside the palace walls. The prince agrees. He almost says it is his first time, but catches himself, saying he's just seeking fun. Trust me, we're in for a wild ride. Alright, stick with me as our main character tries to remember he is Callan now, not Baron. He asks the mage if they actually have His Majesty's permission for this little trip. The mage just shrugs, saying the king should be receiving that formal request at this very moment. Baron is not shocked by that attitude, admitting he feels just as guilty as the mage does. He remembers how he escaped from Ian to join the mage, who then claimed the prince was actually his new apprentice. The prince likes the sound of that, while Manhwa asks if he is still taking that antidote regularly. Baron gives the mage a serious look and confirms that yes, he is taking it. In fact, he took a dose earlier today and feels great, so great that the person poisoning him is probably starting to panic. Everything will fall right into place once they walk into the trap, the prince concludes with total confidence. The mage admits he admires that creativity, wondering if the prince even needed his help to begin with. The prince just smiles, insisting that is not true. He says none of this would be possible without that very interesting gift the mage sent his way. When they reach a specific point in the kingdom, they halt their horses. The mage turns his horse away from the prince, stating that this is the point where he must leave him. The mage considers staying with his apprentice but ultimately decides to let the kid do as he wishes. Pulling his hood over his head, the prince says he knew the mage would understand his reasons for this. Manisil mentions a magic shop on Tanya Street and asks the prince to come find him there once he finishes his own work. Spurring his horse, the prince agrees to meet there and wishes them both luck. Then, they head off in opposite directions. Next, we see a massive man forging a sword. The prince holds the weapon up to his face, where the blade reflects his striking red eye. Riding away from the shop, he thinks that this sword should be enough for now. He sheathes the blade, figuring it will get the job done until his custom order is finally ready for him. Standing in a dark alley past the blacksmith shop, he knows he just needs more information to move forward. Secretia runs a massive network across the continent to gather intel from other nations. But pay attention here, these spies are actually elite assassins who have survived years of the most brutal training imaginable. The architects of this deadly network? None other than King Duan, the father of the prince's past self, Bern. Pulling his hood low, he moves down a dark alley where he spots two men who look completely drunk. He is already closing in on the Pigeon Post Center on Nasha Street. Bern knows how lethal these assassins are since he literally trained them. As the drunks pass by, he just adjusts his hood to stay hidden. Now that he is a prince of Cares, if those assassins spot him, they will likely kidnap or kill him. Those black locks and red eyes of his are just too easy to spot. Bern knows he needs to stay low, so he steps inside the Pigeon Post Center. It is a huge place with 2 floors and birds everywhere. As he walks in, he realizes it is even bigger than expected. A young employee asks if he is looking for a carrier pigeon, but the prince tells him that is not it. Bern notes that the birds have not even woken up yet, which definitely grabs the attendant's full attention. The man explains they are just sleepy, but the prince notices they look exhausted, as if they have traveled a long distance. The man confirms they are exhausted. While looking at a bird with a key mark on its back, Bern notes that this is its home. The man then asks what he is doing there. Okay, watch this. Bern says he wants bird food, but in a heartbeat, the attendant snaps and launches a sudden attack on the prince. The attendant manages to slash a piece right off the prince's hood. Pressing a dagger against Bern's neck, the man claims he does not remember selling any pigeons to him lately. Bern realizes this guy is no ordinary fighter, and his current body is not ready to take him on yet. Placing his hand on the man's blade to lower it, the prince says it is obvious he has not sold any birds since he just arrived. The man just stares him down with a calm look. In this world, birds mean spies and birdseed means info. These secretion spies keep their identities hidden from everyone, even allies, to make sure no missions are ruined if someone is captured. The man then asks whose spy he is. The prince just gives a half smile, remaining perfectly calm. He knows they cannot check his claim, even though he is using his father's name, Nabale, to pretend he is one of them. Bern claims he is one of Neba's spies, and trust me, you're going to love this man's reaction. Let's watch Callie become the first prince to spy on his own kingdom. Bern calmly asked for information since he had just left the nest, so the man opened a secret passage. He told the young man to follow as he led the way. While checking the tunnel, the man said they would meet here, often call him White Falcon. Bern chose Red Swan. The man promised he would definitely remember that name. Inside a room full of books, Bern asked for a specific item and some vital information. That will be 8 furons, paid up front, a price that actually caught the prince off guard. Bern wondered if this guy was just trying to scam him before even hearing the request. Sensing his doubt, the man explained they always charge a fixed fee. He then handed over the item along with the requested information. Bern checked the paper, asking if the location was legit. White Falcon swore it was the only match. Bern thanked him, but White Falcon warned him to stay alert as he left. This felt weird. Bern knew this was not the type of guy to care about someone's safety. Falcon noted this place was not exactly safe, and the prince had to agree. Now pay attention, Bern knows the only dangerous thing in this room is White Falcon himself. The prince continued his search, eventually reaching a bridge crowded with a strange group of people. He tried to slip past them unnoticed, but his horse suddenly got spooked by something. As he calmed his terrified horse, a man from the group walked up. He explained they were honoring the dead and asked the prince to wait just a moment. The prince, not immediately understanding the meaning of this journey, looked at the river and realized it was a ceremony. He dismounted, willing to wait rather than disrupt a soul's final journey. Every nation has its own customs. The Syrians believe souls leave this world inside red flowers carried away by the river. They say crossing the bridge now would knock those souls off their path. Back in his homeland, Scythia, they mourn by placing cynar flowers on graves. You and I see the beauty here, petals that wither at sunrise only to bloom purple at night. This rite gives the Syrians closure as they say their final goodbyes. Bern stood there patiently until the entire ceremony was finished. He wondered if his brother ever placed flowers for him, or if the Arcus Tempest ended everything first. Maybe he was just another lost soul knocked off course. The man thanked the prince for waiting, telling him he could now continue his journey. Bern stayed silent. He mounted his horse, deciding the past did not matter. He was a prince of Kailus now. Lowering his hood, the prince told the man the souls could finally rest in peace now. The man was stunned by the prince's face as he crossed the bridge. As he watched the prince leave, a companion called for him to finish the ritual. She asked if anything happened, and Arson, the High Magistrate of Volcanum, told her nothing did. This was the man responsible for Bern's death back in Secretia. Arson lowered his hood, noting the stranger seemed like a good person. Bern noticed every shop was named Cispanian. Standing before a Cispanian tavern, Bern muttered that the sight was truly incredible. The spies were not lying when they said this place was crawling with Cispanian followers. A tavern worker welcomed him inside and offered to find him a table. Bern declined, stating he had business up on the 4th floor instead. The man looked shocked, but agreed with a shaky voice and opened the door. He led the way, opened a door, and wished him a pleasant time. Bern enters the empty room. You and I know something big is coming. All right. You and I are diving into a secret world where Callan spots a strange coat rack, remembering the vital intel he bought. This was the hidden heart of the criminal underworld in the royal capital of Sires. The prince grips the rack and twists it left, triggering a hidden mechanism that slides open a secret door right beside him. The password was simple. Ask for the 4th floor in a building that only has 2 stories to get inside. Everything above ground was just a fake facade for the massive, illegal basement hidden deep underground. Walking down the stairs, he knew his target wasn't the petty gambling hall on the 3rd floor of the building. No, he was after something buried even deeper. He finally reaches a door and slowly pushes it open to enter. Inside, the air is thick with violence. Men are tearing each other apart in a brutal and blood-soaked fighting ring. This is exactly the dark hole the prince was looking for. The bloodthirsty crowd screams for the fighters to get more aggressive, betting on whoever shows the most brutal affection in the ring. Suddenly, the announcer booms. Gerard the Affectionate has taken yet another victory for himself and his lucky bettors. Payout tickets are coming out now. If you bet on the white side, get over here and collect your gold. While the loser is dragged away through the dirt, the crowd hurls insults. Tucked away in a dark corner, the prince watches the chaos. The air is suffocating, filled with the stench and screams of people who have clearly abandoned their humanity. What a disgusting sight. A man taps Bern on the shoulder, reminding him he hasn't paid. After Bern settles up, the man signals a young attendant to lead him to table 27. A stunning young woman in a red dress with bright blue hair approaches the prince at his table. She grabs his arm and silently gestures for him to follow. He wonders if she has some difficulty speaking at all. When she turns her head, Callan freezes. Her ear has been brutally mutilated, leaving him in a state of total shock. He realizes right then that none of these women are wearing these fancy outfits by their own choice. He spots the tracking collars on their necks. They are being kept under constant, heavy surveillance at all times here. The woman gives him a nudge. She points to a tray, silently asking if he wants to place a bet. Bern reaches into his pocket. If he wants to blend in, he has to play the game for now. He decides to play along until he finds his target, dropping money on the black side. Now, pay attention, because the rules here are simple. You bet on a fighter. If they win, you double your money. 3 florins becomes 6 florins. 6 becomes 12, and it just keeps snowballing. Soon, the announcer screams out the winner of the 10th fight of the night, Panther of the Steel Legs. Once again, the announcer calls for the payout tickets to be handed out to the winners. Everyone who bet on the black side, come get your money. Don't leave your hard-earned winnings behind. The room goes silent. Bern's 3 florins just turned into 1,536. The crowd starts whispering in total disbelief. Bern doesn't care about the gold. He is only here for the final fight of the entire night. A 4 times payout. The special main event we have all been waiting for is finally here, the announcer yells. On the white side, we have Sean the Raging Hammer, and on the black side, the unwavering challenger. I know what you're thinking, but the prince is absolutely floored when he finally sees the challenger. Callan remembers this man from his past. He was a gladiator forced to spill blood for money until the death of his little sister changed his destiny. The announcer screams, "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you," while the man prepares himself for the upcoming slaughter. "Do you want to be a knight, Kyrie?" he was once asked. "Not a knight, my prince. I want to be your sword. I want to be your blade." Bern flashes back to his final moment, telling the man to never drop his steel. Now, Kyrie steps into the ring. The announcer introduces him to the rowdy crowd as the demonic eye. Without hesitating, the prince slams all his coins onto the tray. "Everything on the black side," he shouts across the room. The attendant's jaw drops. The entire arena is stunned that he is risking a small fortune on this one man. They think he is either a complete idiot or just totally insane. He just smiles. He knows exactly what he's doing. The announcer bellows. With 0 wins to his name, Kyrie has never triumphed. Will he rewrite his history tonight? Someone asks the prince if he's really sure he wants to flush all that money down the drain. A tall blonde man sitting just ahead of him turns around to look at Bern with a smirk. He tells Bern to switch sides because Kyrie is a born loser, but Bern just asks the attendant if the bet is set. "Trust me, you'll want to see what happens next." Let's dive into a world where one bet can change everything or get you killed. The guy was getting annoyed, warning him that it was his own skin on the line, not the house's cash. The announcer yelled that the raging hammer never lets his victims walk away in one piece. While the crowd roared, Kairi stared at the rookie who'd bet his life on him. His opponent mocked him, saying another gambler was going hungry tonight. Because of some street dog who refused to stay down and leave the ring, the fighters squared off. Before his shackles even hit the floor, Kairi's opponent lunged at him like a wild animal. Raging Hammer unleashed his assault immediately. Kairi could only curl up and try to shield his skull. Just as he blocked one hit, another slammed in from the left. Kairi barely managed to tank the blow. Hammer mocked his speed, landing a heavy kick to the gut that sent Kairi flying and coughing up blood. The arena went wild for the finisher, but Bern slammed his hand on the table in pure disbelief. Looking absolutely livid, Bern realized Kairi was just a human punching bag without his blade. He's an easy target. Why is he just taking these hits? Bern couldn't believe it. Kairi tried to swing back, but he was so slow his opponent just laughed at him. Hammer countered with a massive punch, screaming at him to quit. He kept swinging, declaring this was the end of the road. Now watch this. This is the split second where the entire fight flips on its head. Bern stood up and screamed Kairi's name to get his head in the game. He yelled for him to drop his shoulder. Just before the knockout punch landed, Kairi heard the order. He didn't get why, but he moved anyway. As the fist whistled toward his face, Kairi ducked his shoulder, letting the power shot sail harmlessly overhead. He stayed low, coiling his muscles like a spring. Kairi pulled his fist back for the perfect counter. Bern grinned as Kairi dodged. Then, Kairi buried a punch into Hammer's gut with every ounce of his strength. The tide turned instantly. Kairi started raining down blows, looking like he could go all night without breaking a sweat. One final, bone-shattering hook to the face sent Hammer's teeth flying. The giant collapsed onto the canvas, completely out cold. The entire arena went dead silent. Nobody expected this nobody kid to actually pull off the win. You saw that too, right? That wasn't a mirage. Kairi actually took down the feared Raging Hammer. The announcer shouted Kairi's victory. The gamblers were furious, since almost everyone had bet their fortunes on the favorite. Kairi looked up and found the man who tipped him off. Young Prince Bern was beaming with pride at the win, but before he could even celebrate, a stranger slipped behind him and told him to come along quietly. Bern watched the man approaching Kairi. He was a tall, hulking figure with dark hair and a dangerous vibe. The brute said someone wanted a word. He led Kairi through the shadows and into a private room. A man sat on a sofa, praising Kairi for turning 3 coins into a mountain of gold. The guard stood watch at the door, slowly sliding his sword from its sheath while the man kept talking about the money. With a nasty grin that flashed a single gold tooth, the man sneered that a kid like Kairi shouldn't be carrying so much cash. Bern just let out a small smile. Bern noted the man didn't even have the class to negotiate. He was even dumber than the prince had imagined. With fire in his eyes, Bern told the man to take off the hood. He wanted to see his face before breaking it. Holding his own hood, Bern asked if the man was really sure he wanted to do this. "This hood is the only thing keeping you safe," the prince warned. Curious, the boss gestured for his thugs to move in. 2 massive goons stepped toward the young prince. One reached for the hood, telling him not to be shy. "We just want a little peek at the face you're hiding so badly." But before the hand could touch him, Bern's dagger flashed out and intercepted it in a heartbeat. Dagger in hand, Bern mocked the thug. "Shouldn't someone in your line of work be faster? Where are your instincts?" The boss was stunned by Bern's speed. He stammered about needing time for the money, but Bern told him to keep it. In exchange, he was taking Kairi. He leveled his blade right at the leader's throat. The chief argued that his master wouldn't be happy. After all, the boy was finally starting to earn his keep. "Trust me, you and I are about to find out if these thugs realize they just picked a fight with the wrong prince." "Alright, let's watch," as Bern keeps his dagger aimed right at the chief. The chief refuses to give up Kairi, but he is suddenly startled by something flying right toward him. The table and the chief's pants get sliced clean. "Keep the gold and stay alive," the youth warns him coldly. Bern channels mana into the blade, asking the terrified chief if he finally has his attention. Paralyzed by fear, the chief asks if that was a sword aura, before pointing to a thug and shouting for him to bring Kairi back right now. Callian hopes he will not have to show off like that again. His body cannot handle that much aura yet. Then, the thug returns, claiming there is a big problem. With his pants still ruined, the chief asks what is wrong. Kairi will not leave Hina behind, a name that sends a jolt through Callan's memories. He remembers Kairi's words from before. His sister chose death when he left her alone. He failed her once, but not today. Callan tells the chief he will handle this. "Bring the girl too," the desperate chief shouts. Callian decides to go get her himself, and as the chief promises him a safe path, the prince suddenly reaches his hand out toward the man. The chief stares, having no idea what the prince wants from him. With a mocking smirk, Callan tells the chief to pay him back the 3 florins and the entrance fee. Outside, Callan waits on his horse while Kairi and Hina stand back. Hina looks terrified, having no clue what is actually going on right now. Kairi pulls Hina into a protective hug and thanks Callian for getting them out of there. Callian just watches them from the corner of his eye. Kairi is confused about why he is being helped, but pay attention, something fast is approaching. In the blink of an eye, Callian wraps his coat around Hina, telling them they can finally relax because he has absolutely no intention of hurting them. Kairi's heart stops the moment he sees the young man's face without the hood. It is Prince Callian. He immediately bows, apologizing for not recognizing royalty sooner. Callian places a hand on his shoulder and tells him to stand tall. Half-elf siblings with absolutely nothing to their names. Callian can only imagine the hell they have survived. In the past life, Kairi failed to protect her. Beginners often leave their shoulders exposed when training with a sword. The prince asks if he wants to be a knight, but Kairi says he does not care for titles, he just wants to be a blade that protects everyone. That answer takes the prince by surprise. He hands Kairi a sword. "Be my shield," he commands. "Think it over and find me once you have made your final choice." "Why are you so kind?" "Because I need a sharp blade." Truth is, he is just paying back an old companion. Late at night, Tengxian Street is completely deserted. That is where the Mage Association office stands tall. Manisil reads the report on the cavalry. The prince is worried about Paloon and wants us to keep a very close eye on him. Paloon found a cut rope at the banquet. Manisil finishes reading and sets the letter on fire. He watches the flames, wondering how his apprentice knew, and honestly, so am I. Just then, Prince Callian stumbles in sweaty and rumpled. But he has a wide, relieved smile on his face. The mage looks him over. "Did you get into a fight, Your Highness?" He sits down and explains that some very unexpected things happened. The mage starts making tea, noting how hectic the prince's day looked. "It certainly was a very long day," Callian admits. "I got the intel and set a trap for Dwar's company." He wonders why the mage looks worried instead of being impressed. But seeing how the tea is made shocks him. Pure magic. This is a real mage's office. The mage asks if he expected eyes in his magic potion, and trust me, the prince almost certainly did. "Alright. You and I are about to dive into a moment where a simple conversation turns deadly." Callan spots a dull dagger on the table that looks totally out of place. He takes a closer look and his heart stops. It is the exact same blade he had acquired earlier. The mage asks what the prince's dagger is doing there, but Callan is just as shocked as we are. Suddenly, the weapon takes flight, startling him before it rockets straight toward the prince's chest with lethal intent. With the blade inches away, Callan realizes he can't dodge. The mage just watches, arms crossed, completely unfazed. The old man simply notes that even in such a frail body, Callan moved surprisingly fast. The prince manages to dodge by channeling aura into his own blade. Before the dagger hits the floor, it floats up as the mage explains it is a magical artifact from Sepion. It's designed to reveal copies of an opponent's hidden weapons, the mage explains while grabbing the blade. "Consider it a friendly warning," the mage says with a knowing look. Panting from the agonizing pain of using mana, Callan realizes he acted too rashly during what was obviously just a simple test. But the mage counters, how could he overreact when he doesn't even know the proper way to hold a sword? The prince stays slumped on the sofa, clutching his chest and struggling to catch his breath. "Now, pay attention here." The mage touches his shoulder and admits he knew something was strange from their very first meeting. A meeting that did not go as planned. He shows Callan records of past talks. He shares that the king saw the nobles were amazed by Callan's change, while the queen saw he had more will to live than fear of death. That kind of drive only comes from someone who has seen a lot of bloodshed, the mage observes. What is more, he already knew something would go down at the cavalry show. He demands the prince explain the truth behind it all. As healing magic kicks in, the prince feels his strength returning and his body rapidly regenerating. During the recovery, Bern wonders if the mage is suspicious or just trying to build a real foundation of trust. Slamming his hand down, Bern finally drops the act. "I am not Callan. My true name is Bern Secretia." Sitting face to face, the mage asks him for the cold truth, is the real Prince Callan actually dead? Bern shakes his head. He was unsure at first, but now he's certain that Callan is still alive and can actually feel his presence. The mage remembers their first meeting, where Callan claimed he didn't want the throne. He asks what Bern truly wants. Calmly, Bern answers that his only goal is to stop the coming wars. He doesn't know why Kairi wants the axis of time, but he fears history will repeat itself if he fails. That is why he's determined to uncover the truth behind everything. The mage asks if this is for the good of Chase, the rightful heir, or just for Bern's own gain. Confused, Bern asks the mage exactly what he's trying to get at with that question. The mage explains a crucial fact that Bern needs to hear right now. Currently, Secretia only has Prince Chase. Chase is the son of a concubine, and the queen is childless. Therefore, Bern has no way of existing there. You and I can only imagine the shock Bern feels. He's trapped in Callan's body, facing a total, soul-crushing void. Lost in thought, He wonders if he truly doesn't exist anymore, in Secretia or anywhere else. The prince spirals into fear, questioning the very mechanics of how he ended up in this world. Callan's body is physically perfect, but deep down, Bern feels something is deeply wrong with his soul. He confesses that he sometimes worries someone else took over his old body, just like he took over Callan's. As long as I am alive, another Bern cannot exist. The young man is clearly heartbroken, knowing that living this new life feels like he's stolen it from another. Then the mage tries to explain Secretia's situation, stating that Chase was the sole heir to the throne. He says, "You must know that the past and present are not the same, and the future may have been altered." Unlike Bern, who grew up with loyal friends, the three princes of Caius are now in mortal danger. The mage stays serious while Bern, still in Callan's form, looks on in complete and utter disbelief. He tells Bern not to be bound by the past. Bern clarifies that he has no intention of looking back. He reveals that from the moment he first arrived in the land of Kairi, the second he opened his eyes at that exact moment, he had already decided to give up on living his life as Bern. And that's where we leave it, Bern asking if the mage is truly okay with this insane situation. "Stick with me, he isn't even the crown prince of Cuse." With a grin, the mage tells Bern there is zero need to worry. He guarantees that from the start, only one specific person shared a connection with him and the priest. They are already mounted on their horses. Bern can't help but wonder if the wizard knew about the Arcus Tempest all along. He decides to ask if the wizard actually knows the secrets of the temporal axis. The wizard keeps a dead serious expression as he rides beside Bern. He explains that exactly 1 year ago, Prince Chase sought him out, looking for answers regarding the temporal axis. The wizard personally infiltrated secret locations, but he found nothing except one fact, that axis was definitely not created by a human hand. Last month, a letter arrived from Secretia about the axis vanishing right when Bern says he traveled 10 years into the past. Bern is stunned. He realizes his time travel happened at the exact moment the temporal axis completely disappeared. Bern suggests that maybe his return was the cause of it. Before Bern can finish, the wizard cuts him off. It is a massive mystery, and they still don't have the answers. However, he reveals something else. There is someone they can ask. A person who knows more than the wizard and is scheduled to meet the prince very soon. This person is Suspanian. Prince Callian just goes along with whatever the wizard decides for now. His rite of passage is coming up, a sacred ceremony for new members of the Suspanian royalty. This is the moment when everyone finally learns the Suspanian will. The wizard warns that staying alive for this ceremony is the top priority. He tells the prince to do whatever it takes. Now, pay attention, because Bern says even if he fails, the seeds he planted have already started to sprout. Back at the palace, Callian's servant is visibly worried about the prince suddenly leaving his chambers. The prince is carefully examining the plant he received from the wizard, looking like he noticed something strange. His servant just tells him to wash up for bed. With a mysterious smile, the prince asks his servant if he wants to see something really interesting. They head out to the palace terrace. It is early morning and the air is freezing. This plant from the Mages Society is incredibly rare, with secret traits that most people would never recognize. The prince recalls how he faked an accident to spill poison into the flower pot. No one noticed, and he spent the whole time watching the servant's reaction. A normal person wouldn't last 7 days with that poison, let alone a tiny plant. Yet, this plant is still alive, almost as if someone had secretly swapped it out. Up on the terrace, Ian notices something glowing and points it out to the prince. He is mesmerized by the intense light. A glowing trail forms across the courtyard. If they swap the plant, getting rid of the original pot won't be easy. They would have to hide it somewhere safe, the prince thinks. This is exactly how he will uncover the truth. The owner of Hessa Palace is definitely involved. May Silas wait for him. The next day begins with heavy rain. The prince stares at the rain falling outside his window. He hears someone enter the room and turns to see who it is. It is Ian, arriving with the morning tea. The prince greets him warmly and asks if he managed to sleep well last night. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Callian looks way too healthy and cheerful right now, doesn't he? A bit surprised, Ian confirms he slept fine and asks the prince the same. He then sets the tea tray down on the table. Ian mentions it is unusual for the prince to ask about his sleep first. He also notes that Callian woke up quite early. Ian jokes that it must be a lucky sign, because today the sun might actually rise in the west. The prince lifts his teacup for a drink. Ian asks if the rain woke him. The prince thinks to himself that it is subtle, but he can still feel it. You actually increased the amount of poison, Silas, the prince thinks. He asks Ian if there is an event next week where every noble will be gathered. His servant confirms a major meeting is coming, and even the king himself will be there. The prince learns that exactly 1 week after that meeting, there will be a grand banquet. That will be the perfect chance for him to finally test the poison. So, Silas, enjoy your time while you still can, the prince thinks. He takes the pill provided by the mage and swallows it down just like a piece of candy. He hands the empty cup back to Ian, who then asks him a question. Ian wants to know if the prince has eaten anything over the last few days. Callian just replies that he has only been taking in nutrients. Closing his pouch, the prince mentions feeling a bit weak and asks to go down for breakfast. And trust me, you and I just witnessed a moment that changes everything for the servant and the prince. Alright, let us dive back into the royal drama where Callian is already playing dangerous mind games at the breakfast table. Callian honestly felt the morning was much more peaceful without Prince Plant there to ruin his mood and appetite. As the eldest prince Randall sipped his wine, Callian casually mentioned that the roses would be blooming very soon. That random remark caught Randall off guard. He shot a sharp look at Callian, but the boy just smiled back. Without even finishing his meal, Randall stood up and stormed out. Ian whispered, asking why Callian brought up flowers so randomly during breakfast. Callian just shrugged, saying he saw flowers in the hall and remembered how much Randall cared about his precious roses. The servant thought the excuse made absolutely no sense, but Callian just ignored him and kept drinking his hot coffee. Next we see Prince Callian training hard in the rain. He is completely soaked in a mixture of sweat and water. He was leaning against a tree, gasping for air, when a mysterious shadow suddenly started walking toward him. A voice teased that he looked more pathetic every day. Callian replied that skipping physical training was not an option if he wanted to improve. It was his master, the great wizard Manhwa. He mentioned he had just been busy speaking with a lady named Lamine. Callian was shocked his master used her first name, but the wizard just laughed and said there was nothing wrong with it. It is just a common name, after all. He then asked why Callian had summoned him so urgently today. Now pay attention, because Callian is about to ask for two major things. First, he needs two completely new secret identities created. Second, he wants to investigate the mysterious deaths of those nobles and find their hidden connection to the House of Roma. The wizard agreed it would be easy. Honestly, he thought Callian was being quite kind to even ask like that. He then asked if the prince was in a serious hurry to get this investigation moving. The wizard revealed that the poison dosage had increased, and he was pretty sure he had already found the culprit. He already had a target in mind, and Callian warned that their enemies would soon start pressuring them even harder. Callian knew that even a great wizard needed a hidden ace in the hole to survive when the time was right. Manhwa asked if he was just a distraction, but Callian looked him in the eyes and said, "No, a weapon. That is right, a weapon." After all, Callian knows the true power of wizards better than anyone else in this world. Trust me, this is where the plan gets epic. He plans to form a society of loyal wizards, unlike the white demons who once killed him. Manhwa was absolutely stunned by the young prince's words. He reminded him that wizards are born with talent, not just trained like knights. But Callian had a secret from his past timeline that immediately grabbed the old wizard's full and undivided attention. Back then, when the king of Roma wanted his own wizard society, the nobility just laughed at the crazy idea. Because they did not take it seriously, the king built the whole organization in total secret without anyone noticing. But shortly after the society was finished, King Roma died under very suspicious circumstances. That powerful society then swore loyalty to his heir, Plant, becoming his most dangerous pawns in the coming war. But you and I know Callian is not about to let that dark history repeat itself so easily this time around. He knew he had to be careful since House Roma would try to crush his plans. Callian then revealed that his secret weapon was actually the poisoned tea the queen was feeding him. The wizard was confused, but the prince just smiled and promised that the truth would be out very soon. Manhwa looked quite disappointed with that vague answer. Callian then advised him to talk to the king, sensing the monarch was carrying a lot of heavy burdens lately. He knew Plant would definitely make mistakes and be forced to negotiate. They had to seize this moment. Meanwhile, a maid reported they were adding even more poison exactly as the queen ordered. The queen slammed the table, declaring that she would not tolerate a single mistake this time. The rumors spreading among the commoners were starting to make her extremely angry and impatient. The maid trembled in fear as a man suddenly approached the queen's table while they were talking. The queen complained that her disobedient son was refusing to fulfill his royal responsibilities. It was Plant who approached the queen, and he looked absolutely furious. He told the queen to stop meddling in his business. And that is where we leave it. You and I just witnessed a mother and son at each other's throats. Wild, right? Trust me, you and I are about to dive into one of the coldest revenge plots in recent Manhwa. The queen claims her motherhood is just pure sacrifice for her son's sake. Hearing this, Plan clenches his fist in absolute fury. He can't stand her lies anymore, turning his back and storming right out of her presence. As she sips her tea, the queen thinks Plan is far too fragile. She's convinced her path to the throne is finally clear of any real competition. Moving day finally arrives, and the weather is perfect. Someone is humming along, clearly in a fantastic mood as they prepare for the big change. "You've been singing all morning," Kyrie notes with a grin. "Are you really that excited for what's coming next?" "We're finally heading to the royal palace, which means seeing the prince again," Hina replies. Kyrie just smirks and asks if she actually has a crush. Hina doesn't hold back. saying the prince is incredible and she can hardly wait for the banquet to start tonight. Meanwhile, inside the palace walls, the tailor and his assistants are working frantically to finish the prince's formal royal attire. Ian puts the finishing touches on the outfit, warning the prince that the banquet starts in exactly 1 hour. But the prince has a secret favor to ask. Looking at himself, the young man decides it's finally time to end this little game once and for all. Now watch this. Because our main character is done being a victim. The weak prince who once poisoned himself is now entering the banquet hall with total elegance. He and the queen lock eyes for a brief, intense moment. This is the spark that starts a brand new wave of massive changes. Ian pushes his horse to the limit, riding hard, thinking only of the prince's strange request. He was tasked with delivering 2 letters, one to the Arcane Enclave and one to Master Allen. The Enclave had to receive theirs first, no matter what. The prince promised he'd take care of himself and that everything would go smoothly, but Ian isn't so sure about that. Ian is visibly distressed. This isn't the first time the prince has acted this reckless, and it usually means trouble is brewing. Just as Ian tries to convince himself he's worrying over nothing, the scene shifts to the banquet where a wine glass suddenly shatters on the floor. The sound startles every guest, including the king. Someone is collapsing right in front of the queen, and the room goes dead silent. Back at the Enclave, a purple-haired woman tells Manasil that all the secret records he asked for are finally ready for him. These official documents are more than enough to start a real fire, the woman says with a serious look. This is Uriah Siren, head of the Cyan Arcane Enclave. She's shocked such massive secrets were kept hidden, but the mage knows the nobles had zero choice. Lesser houses wouldn't dare cross a powerhouse like House Roma, Uriah concludes, knowing the terrifying stakes involved. It was a simple matter of survival to avoid any unfortunate accidents. Uriah asks Manasil if he has any clue what Prince Callian plans to do with this intel. Manasil goes quiet, lost in thought for a moment. Suddenly, the door flies open and someone yells for Madame Uriah. It's Ian, breathless and soaked in sweat from his desperate, high-speed ride. He looks relieved to see both recipients together. Without a word, Ian hands over the first letter from Prince Callian to Master Manasil. While Manasil scans the letter, Ian passes the second one over to Uriah, his heart still racing from the journey. Manasil stands up instantly, grabbing his coat. He demands to know exactly where tonight's banquet is being held, his face turning pale. You and I both know something is wrong here. Ian is confused by the sudden rush, but Uriah screams that Callian's life is literally on the line. Ian freezes, terrified by Uriah's sudden and chilling declaration. The letter reveals Callian's insane gamble. He's risking his own life to force a negotiation, counting on Manasil to save him if things break. 1 hour before the chaos, Callian was sitting face-to-face with the queen, calmly having a cup of tea together. He suggests they both stop pretending and drop their masks. The queen snaps her fan shut, agreeing that being fake won't make a difference anymore. He sips his tea. Callian clarifies he meant dropping their masks, not their manners, while staring her down. The queen mocks him, asking if a word duel is his only weapon. I expected a real surprise, the queen says, standing up. She claims she's disappointed and regrets wasting her precious time on someone like him. She sneers that a commoner like Callian would never understand the true courtesy of keeping a royal guest entertained. Callian just stares and says he knows about the poison. Setting his cup down, Callian says he's had enough of this drink. He can't imagine ever liking the taste of poison. The queen just plays dumb. With a fake smile, she tells him his little joke didn't land quite the way he probably hoped it would. Callian tells her not to worry because he came prepared. He has plenty of ways to sharpen her dull and weakened mind tonight. He wonders aloud what he should put on the line to make her behave, slowly picking up a mysterious vial. The only thing I have of value is this strong heart, so I decided to risk it, the prince says, showing her the liquid. Callian explains that the substance inside will stop a heart for a brief moment. The queen leans in, finally looking nervous. So what do you and I take from this? The prince is untouchable. Silver can't detect it, but he's safe thanks to Suspanian's blessing. Pure genius. However, because the blessing only heals one wound at a time, drinking that poison would let it spread through his body and kill him instantly. If I died poisoned while alone with you, who do you think they would blame? The prince asked, as the queen looked on with pure contempt. All right, you and I are about to see how ruthless this queen really is. She laughed in Callan's face, mocking his weak attempt at a threat. She continued, everyone knew she had killed Callian's mother, yet they chose silence. Why would this time be any different? She sneered. Those words sparked a fire in the prince. Callan glared at her and asked what she wanted him to do. Smiling, the queen told him to do as he pleased. The prince didn't hesitate. He picked up the cup and drank the tea. He downed it in a single gulp while she watched with a twisted grin, calling him a fool. Who would ever dare point a finger at her? Not even Roma himself could force me to obey his will, the queen thought, her smile widening. There was nothing in Caris she couldn't possess, and that included the throne itself. Over time, she had cleared every obstacle and taken everything she ever wanted. Well, Almost everything. Watch closely now, because this is where the trap finally snaps shut. As the banquet began, a sudden violent cough echoed through the hall. The queen hid her joy behind a mask, thinking that only one target remained. Suddenly, Prince Callian collapsed, coughing up blood-red juice. The entire room erupted in sheer panic. Guests rushed forward, screaming for a priest. Behind her silk fan, the queen's eyes gleamed with malice. Callian lay broken right at the queen's feet. Chaos took over as everyone scrambled for answers. Was the drink poisoned? Was he attacked before arriving? Who was the last person he saw? Suddenly, a man roared for silence, threatening death to anyone who dared to speak. The queen felt victorious. No one would dare accuse her. The king rushed to Callian's side. Cradling his son, the king begged him to stay alive. Then, Callian whispered the word father, catching the king off guard. The king remembered the day Callian's mother died and her final wish to protect their son. Callian tried to speak, but his voice failed, and he could only point. The king finally seemed to understand what the prince meant. The queen faked her horror at such a disgraceful event, announcing that she couldn't stay and would return to Hysia Palace. Still holding the prince, the king's voice trembled with rage as he asked how she dared to hurt his son. He roared Queen Khaleesi's name. The room went dead silent. No one expected him to confront her like this. The queen's smirk vanished, replaced by pure shock. The crowd began to whisper as the tension reached a breaking point. People whispered that the two had been seen together earlier. I know what you're thinking, she's finally getting caught. The queen gripped her fan, feeling the eyes of the court on her. She covered her face and claimed the king was delusional, suggesting that perhaps the prince was already suffering from a chronic illness. Furious, the king shouted that she was there when Freya died, and every knight in the room could confirm it. He clearly remembered her lying, saying that Freya had died from a simple sickness. Selich, even if that's true, the blame falls on you, the king growled. The queen countered, asking who could possibly prove the prince was healthy. A faint smile played on her lips as she continued. Maybe the princes who eat breakfast with him daily know the truth. Why not ask them about Callian's health? The king snapped at her to stop that mocking tone, but she just claimed to be concerned while the prince's condition worsened. Shaking with rage, the king drew his sword and demanded how she dared to call him our son. A voice whispered that she was the last person who should say that. The queen's face twisted in anger. Planche stepped forward, insisting that Callian was perfectly fine and had never shown any signs of illness. At least, that was what he saw the last time they met. The queen turned her fury toward Planche. The doors burst open as a priest arrived. The queen tried to slip away to Hysia Palace, while the king begged for his son to be healed. Just as the priest prepared his healing magic for the prince, a shimmering barrier suddenly shielded the prince. A mysterious figure appeared behind the priest, blocking his magic completely. It was the mage Manhwa, drenched in sweat. She gasped that she wanted him dead. It was better to just end his life now. Furious, the king demanded an explanation. Trust me, you and I need to see what happens next. Alright, you and I are jumping into a moment where life hangs by a thread. If a mage's heart circle touches sacred power, it does not matter how lucky they are, it explodes. Kaul is writhing on the ground, coughing blood. The desperate king asks if magic can save his son. The mage says only a nature healer might have hope. Pure magic? It is just not enough. Magic is a dead end. Still, the king demands a solution because the prince is in agony. The mage flashes back to a terrifying memory, a scene that still haunts his nightmares. A man was on his knees, bleeding out just like Kaul. He was begging to know why. Back now, Manhwa cradles Prince Callian's head in his lap, a master watching his student fade. Kaul looks up with blurry eyes and asks why his master looks so incredibly sad. Manhwa realizes he has no choice. He never thought he would have to use this spell again. He remembers using that magic before. He called the man stubborn as the pain faded. Days pass. The city looks normal. Then, a single leaf flies out of nowhere and hits a man's face. He looks up and sees the sky is filled with floating leaves. Trust me, these are not just leaves, they are written pleas for the truth about the Brizzen family. The Brizens are hit with a massive scandal. Everyone knows the queen tried to poison Callian. People are furious. Nobody wants to be near them. One wrong move and they are finished too. Even the king points the finger at Queen Selales. He says she is the murderer. The public is rioting. They are defacing the walls, screaming for Queen Casey to be dealt with. Manhwa remembers Callian's plan. He wanted to use the queen's downfall to finally build his own mage troupe. The king is deep in thought while reading a letter. It looks like it is from the prince. He is actually shocked. It turns out Callian has the exact same idea for a mage troupe. Queen Cece stands by the prince's bed. She notes that the Mage Association is staying busy. She hides her face behind a fan. She wants to know when they planned all this. Callian plays it cool. He says he has no clue, then thanks her for the long rest. She is fuming. For someone who almost died, he looks way too good. He just laughs it off. He says he almost saw the afterlife. He is gasping for air, covered in sweat. He tells her it is time for her to leave. The queen is desperate. She asks if they can negotiate a deal. I know what you're thinking, she's way too late. Callan tells her exactly that. She makes an offer. Deny the rumors, and she will let his plans go through. The prince just laughs in her face. He says she is totally misreading the room. She is boiling inside. Callan tells her he does not need her permission for anything anymore. She snaps. She points her finger and demands to know what he actually wants. Callan just gives her a cold, sharp smile. He quotes the ancient law. Then he drops the bomb he wants Pabel's night troops disbanded. The queen is stunned. She asks if he really means all of them. Losing Pell would strip her of half her power. Her influence would be gutted. He tells her to dissolve them and start the mage troop. No other options. She is livid. Callan signals his servant, who hands her a stack of papers. Ian presents the testimony. It has an oath seal, and the queen's jaw drops. It is magic that engraves a contract onto both their hearts. Break the oath, and you die instantly. And that is why Queen Celise was there the moment the prince woke up. Meanwhile, the first prince is in the garden. He is just tending to his roses. He sees a fallen petal and pauses. His mind goes back to Callan's collapse. And trust me, that final look they shared? That is what really haunts him. Alright, you and I are diving into a story where roses and deadly secrets bloom at the exact same time. He remembered Callan wanting to witness those roses bloom, so he decided to follow the prince's lead and watch it all unfold. The second Prince Callan collapsed. Randall stepped forward, ready to intervene and speak his mind before the court. But Planche beat him to it, claiming Callan was fine just moments ago. Randall was genuinely shocked seeing Planche of all people helping. Randall felt the shift in the air. Back in the room, he explained how the soul oath worked to the queen. It was a dark magic that etched the contract directly into the center of their hearts. If the oath is ever broken, the heart shatters, leading to instant and unavoidable death. Since trust isn't their strong suit, Callan asked the queen what she intended to do. She just stood there in shock. Pay attention, things are getting intense. She grabbed the quill from the servant and signed. Immediately, ancient magic began to swirl and flow through the room. The glowing light wrapped around her arm as the signature finished. The deal was sealed in magic chains. Furious, the queen slammed the quill down to the floor, snapping it in half. As she stormed out, Callan warned her not to get the wrong idea about this situation. He reminded her of his brother's betrayal and that fateful day when the poison first touched his lips. Planche didn't help him then. If she'd said one more word, the king's sword would have severed her head right on the spot. Celica's mind raced, thinking only of Planche. Callan's words had clearly caught her off guard. Hardening her resolve, she hurried out of the room. Callan just stood there, watching her cold retreat. Later, the mage entered the room, expressing his utter disbelief that Celica had actually paid a visit. Someone was clearly starving, judging by the pile of bananas. The mage relaxed, seeing Callan was just hungry. Callan didn't miss a beat, declaring these bananas were the best thing he'd ever tasted. The mage joked that after almost dying, everything tastes like a feast. The prince just smiled back. Manisil was annoyed he could smile. He reminded the prince that he was inches away from a grave. He added that if those elven siblings hadn't appeared at that moment, and if Hina wasn't a nature healer, Callan would be a cold corpse. As the mage lectured him on his mortality, Callan admitted he had no clue Hina was actually a healer. Manisil was confused. Didn't he know her secret in his past life? The prince explained he only knew Kyrie back then. By the time they met, Hina was already gone. The mage stopped asking. He finally had all the answers he needed. He was still furious with Callan for taking poison without a real plan, relying purely on the power of the blessing. Callan apologized, and the mage tossed him some papers. They were the IDs for the kids, which the prince had forgotten. Then, something caught his eye. You see that shock on his face, right? The two siblings now shared the last name Bern. The mage explained they needed a surname, so he used his own old name. It seems their meeting was no simple coincidence. Looking over every detail of the certificate, Callan smiled and thanked him. These weren't just some fake documents. These were legitimate identifications, and the mage had personally guaranteed the children were from the Bern territory from the start. The mage then revealed that Roma was actually behind it, which caught the prince completely by surprise. Manisil wondered how Callan would handle being called the king's most beloved son. Callan asked if people really believed that. The mage noted the king's public actions made rumors unavoidable. The prince felt a strange confusion. It felt like these were emotions meant for someone else, not him. He stayed on the sofa, lost in thought as he processed the entire mess. Callan told Ian to clear the banana peels. The servant stepped forward and watched him closely. He told the prince he had news. Ian then dropped a bombshell. He wanted to quit being an assistant. The prince was frozen in shock. This was the last thing he ever expected to hear. A child's foot hit the carpet as a boy sprinted through the massive, columned palace hall. He dashed toward the second floor, peeking over a wooden counter to shout at the top of his lungs that he was finally there. In front of him lay a very sick man. His hand was heavily wrapped in thick bandages. "Trust me, you and I are about to see this bond get tested." That brotherly greeting said it all. All right, stick with me. Because we're diving into a story where secrets collide. It starts with two young brothers. "When summer starts, those awful black insects scream like they're going mad," he replied gloomily. Being more optimistic, the boy noted their strange wings and wondered if they used their stomachs to make those loud sounds. He even suggested catching one of the insects the next morning so they could take a closer look together. But his brother, wrapped in bandages from head to toe, refused. He hated those bugs and just wanted to hear some violin music. "I heard your son is a medical genius," the sick brother muttered. But apparently, the boy was busy with something else. Disturbing whispers reached the boy's ears. A man was pleading, saying it hurt too much and desperately begging for another way. Back then, I didn't realize how devastating it felt to be someone who simply could not have what they desired most. "Saloyan," his brother called out. "Stop looking away from me. Look me right in the eyes. Watch closely, because this is where a childhood memory turns into a nightmare. Understand that I am dying," he whispered softly. The fire was spreading fast. That was how my brother, right before his 15th birthday, decided to end the pain of everyone else. After that tragic day, summer faded into autumn, and soon winter took hold of the world. Once the crickets began their song again, he pulled further into his shell. His father, unable to stand the suffering, forced him out. He constantly tried to nestle into his father's arms, resting his head tiredly on his shoulder. "Who is this boy?" a voice asked. "He is the third prince of our entire kingdom," a voice replied as the red-eyed young man sat grieving, head in hands. Saloyan could see the weight on the prince's heart. "I want to resign from my position," Ian whispered timidly, unable to look Callian in the eye. The prince was shocked. "What are you saying?" he asked. Through heavy sobs, Ian finally began to tell her story. As his closest confidant, she confessed that she had no idea what was actually going on. Then she revealed the truth. She was the one bringing the poison every morning. Callian watched her, looking completely stunned. "It is all my fault," Ian confessed. "I ignored the signs and wasn't there when you were in danger. I knew nothing, and you almost died again," she added. Suddenly, Ian saw the ghost of her dead brother. "Stop ignoring the fact that I am dying," the figure said from beyond, reaching its hands toward her. "Ian, look at me!" Prince Callian shouted. She finally opened her eyes, which were overflowing with tears, as if waking from a nightmare. "You and I both want to know, is the prince finally catching on?" he asked who was standing before him right then. Through her tears, she replied, "It is Prince Callian." Callian placed his hand on her chest and vowed he would not die. "You have been with me since I first woke up here. I only survived because you looked after me. I might not know much about you yet, but I am sure of one thing. You will keep protecting me, right?" His words touched Ian deeply, making him cry even harder. Overwhelmed with emotion, he collapsed to his knees, weeping. "Stop this and get up," the prince ordered. Ian knew there was no turning back as Callian reached out to help him. "There is one person here I must protect for the rest of my life," Ian thought. She vowed to eliminate everyone who made the prince suffer. Callian asked if she was really planning to take revenge for him. She confirmed it, because seeing him hurt was too much. Callian told her to stop, warning that the elephants must stay still. Ian told him to ignore the war, even if she was not acting as a member of the Seagreed family. The prince called her an elephant. Shocked, she asked if he already knew her secret. Callian just shrugged and smiled. When she asked how long he knew, his answer was vague. She said he shouldn't know such things and confessed her hatred for her father. Callian just wanted some coffee after the pests were gone. Callian then challenged her to a bet on who would grow more. Later, in a dream, Bern saw the prince. They stood face to face. Callian wore a calm smile, but Bern looked absolutely astonished. Callian approached Bern, leaning in close with that same smile, before quickly walking past him toward two other figures. They looked like old friends. Then Callian glanced back at Bern, who was now trembling with fear. Bern reached out a hand toward Callian. The prince's smile vanished, replaced by a look of surprise. He smiled again, his gaze full of confidence. Callian said something that jolted Bern awake, watching him as if he were falling. And that's the cliffhanger. Bern woke up, still trapped in Callian's body. "Trust me, we need to see what's next." Alright, let's dive into the story of a prince waking up from a very strange dream. At the old Callan's funeral, Manhwa asks a heavy question: had he finally found peace? Callian replies that the original Callan probably wanted to enjoy his deepest desires before leaving, but he was in such a hurry that he just left. Prince Callian vows to dedicate this new life to the old one, making sure every lost desire is fulfilled. He calls that past life a set of shackles, even feeling a bit envious of the freedom of death. Turning to Manhwa, the prince declares that he is done playing dumb and hiding his true self. There is unfinished business and favors to settle, so he's determined to make this second chance count for something worthy. Pabl's knights are quickly disbanded, with every member sent packing back to Marquis Brie immediately. While Roma warns against royal rumors, King Elon drops a bombshell he's finally creating an elite mage corps. 3 months pass. Ian and the maid realize it is high time to call the tailor. Ian tells the maid to get the tailor because his clothes are all too small now. Then, Prince Callian enters the room where Roma and the king wait. Roma is shocked. Callian has shot up so much he's actually looking taller than even the tallest guards. King Elon cuts to the chase, asking if the plans for Rosalita are finally set. Everything is ready. After all, the prince's big birthday is just around the corner. Manisil reveals the real reason for this meeting. It is time to introduce Callian to a new face. Now pay attention, this mage is supposed to be his guardian, but watch who walks into the room. It is Arson Hertz. The prince stares at him in absolute, silent horror. Roma calls Hertz a genius and hopes they'll grow close, but Callian knows exactly who this man really is. Angry and sharp, the prince calls this a very special, very unexpected birthday gift from the heavens. He coldly asks when this new mage corps will actually be officially formed. Elon says it won't be soon since they lack a name, a set number of members, or even uniforms. Everything is still up in the air. As Hertz smiles at the prince, Elon turns to Roma and asks him to name the new unit. Roma looks like he has been waiting for this moment, having kept a name in mind for months. With a confident grin, he suggests the name Valkan. Prince Callian seems to actually like the sound of it. Elon jokes that Roma was clearly ready for that question. Callian then turns his cold gaze toward Hertz. Clutching his teacup, the prince waits for a reaction, but Hertz just smiles back like nothing is wrong. Callian asks if the name Valkan sounds familiar to him. King Elon watches the two of them very closely. Still wearing that perfect, fake smile, Hertz agrees that it is a truly wonderful name. Now here is the part you and I need to watch the shocking truth about their past connection. Callian says there is no need. Since Hertz is the one who killed the original prince, he knows this version of the man is completely different now. Everything in this world is different. Still, he won't let it slide. Meanwhile, Hertz is somewhere else, literally trembling with fear. Later, Callian meets with Baron Paloon and tells the man to finally make himself comfortable. The prince apologizes for the secrecy and for showing up without any formal warning at all. Paloon is honored, but notes that Callian has never bothered making alliances with the nobility before now. The fact this visit was top secret proves the prince is being careful about the gossip it could cause. Callian isn't here for small talk. He decides it is time to get straight to the point. He's here to collect on saving Paloon's life. He asks what the Baron's Emporium is willing to trade. Paloon brags about his growth, including new diamond trades and a deal with the imperial family for horses. But he quickly realizes that isn't the kind of answer the prince wants. The Baron admits he has nothing of equal value. Callian just smiles, watching him squirm. He then asks if the Baron can handle something far bigger than a simple shop. Paloon says he just needs the staff and the gold. Callian warns him that the Brizzen family has those too. Shocked, the Baron admits he thought only the prince held such massive power. And that's where we leave it. You and I know the real war for resources is just starting. Paloon noted that with Callian's level of funding, even the Brizzen family wouldn't be a threat anymore. Stick with me, because Callian is finally building a mage army. He has the money and the men, but the real challenge is managing it all. Paloon asks if this ambitious plan is the true reward for saving Callian's life. Callian just smiles, saying he has already been paid, claiming this path is the price of his life. This makes Paloon nervous, but he agrees to help immediately. The prince realizes his manipulation worked perfectly. He was fated to die after his 15th birthday. But he changed his destiny. Now, he finally has allies he can trust. All he needs now is to find Sisfanian's will in Rosalita while these events unfold. Arriving at his birthday gala, Callian takes in the massive celebration prepared in his honor. Everything looks perfect. He spots Planche leaning against a pillar and decides it is time for a chat. Smiling, he approaches Planche and greets him, mentioning how long it has been since their last meeting. But pay attention here, Planche completely ignores him. As the prince walks away, Planche mutters a slur about his bloody eyes. Callian looks back, catching the second prince acting as cold and arrogant as ever. Callian declares he will no longer tolerate this disrespect. Planche just smirks and mocks his name, asking if he really is Callian. Planche claims he is not the Callian he once knew, which catches the young prince off guard. Planche recalls a different Callian, one who rode horses, wielded swords, and actually had the guts to talk back. Stepping closer, he bluntly asks who Callian really is. The prince is stunned by the direct question. He reminds himself that he is no longer the king of Secretia who lost his home to Planche. He is not the Mad King. Planche is the one who destroyed Secretia, so he must wait for Sisfanian's will. Smiling, he tells Planche he is talking nonsense. He keeps grinning while the second prince glares back in pure fury. A bit later, the mage. While talking to the prince, he notes that Planche noticed the change because the guy is no idiot, despite being a scoundrel. The prince looks confused and asks if Planche really is just a scoundrel. The mage confirms it, and the prince smiles, realizing that is exactly how he views his brother too. Callian admits he played dumb, but it is clear that Planche did not buy the act for a second. Now, you and I have to wonder, how will he prove his identity? Callian agrees with the mage that his words alone are not enough. He confirms his statement while the mage watches him with a thoughtful, analyzing gaze. The mage worries that even though Callian promised not to live like Bahram, that oath will be hard to keep. The mage grabs the prince's attention and hands him a ring, offering to always listen if he needs someone to talk to. Callian asks if the ring is enchanted with communication magic. The mage confirms it, explaining he poured some of his own power into the band. He warns it will not work near Sisphanian power, like inside the castle, but it will always respond elsewhere. Callian thanks him, happy to stay connected to his master. Manisil asks what is bothering him, claiming that everyone around them is a decent person. With a smirk, his apprentice asks if the mage actually believes that lie. Later on, a man introduces himself as Commander Arson, the leader of the legendary Siegfried Knights. He promises his knights will protect the prince until they reach the Sisphanian nest in Siegfried territory. Ironically, the prince thinks this level of protection is exactly what you would expect from the elite Siegfried Knights. Ian, his servant, is actually the eldest son of the Siegfried family. He asks the prince if he needs anything before they head out. Putting a hand on Ian's shoulder, the prince simply says he needs a drink. Ian asks if water is okay, which clearly enrages the watching knights. He then offers tea instead, and the prince agrees. Ian goes to grab the tea, and His Highness thanks him. The prince looks at the knights and just smiles. They are absolutely fuming that he is bossing their young master around like a common servant. Meanwhile, Manisil, Kairi, and Hina are completely shocked by the prince's bold attitude. The mage wonders why the prince is going out of his way to make even more enemies. This was a rare chance to witness Sisphanian's will. Meanwhile, the entire kingdom is celebrating Callian's birthday. Trust me, you and I are about to see this prince finally come of age. Even Planche was there watching, clearly not having a good time. Meanwhile, the queen stayed in her chambers, casually sipping tea. The prince paraded through the crowd on horseback. His eyes met Manisil's, and the two shared a knowing smile. Stick with me, because this is where the Rosalita begins as the prince passes through those massive gates. He had an accident before, so you know I'm worried. The king asked the mage, wouldn't it be better if you accompanied him? Setting his cup down, the mage calmly replied that there was nothing to fear. He was actually more concerned about the prince inside the castle walls than out. The king noted the mage was same as always, and trust me, that wasn't a compliment. He asked if the mage really wasn't worried. With a heavy sigh, the mage thought to himself that for a man with as many worries as the king, the entire situation had actually been surprisingly different until that exact moment. He then answered the king, stating he wasn't saying anything wrong at all. The king snapped back, exclaiming that was precisely the point he was trying to make. While riding through the forest, the prince started getting curious about how that ring actually worked. He tried asking a few questions, but the ring stayed silent. Ian mentioned Tencel deliveries had arrived, making the palace a chaotic mess. He suggested they start a conversation so they wouldn't die of boredom on the road. The prince told Ian he was responsible for the recent mess, surprised when his servant claimed he was working hard just to chat with him. Ian then turned his attention to the knights and ordered them all to listen up. He explained that the mage declared Prince Callian had zero magical talent and barely knew enough swordsmanship for basic self-defense. Now, pay attention here. Ian calls the prince as fragile as a flower, telling the knights they must protect him with their lives. The knights were totally disappointed. As the eldest son of the Siegfried family, Ian informed the entire group that reaching Lotland would still take 2 to 3 hours. Ian asked if they should take a break, but Prince Callian heard a strange noise from the woods and cut him off. Instantly, every knight drew their sword, going on high alert. Kairi and the mage moved fast to shield the prince. Watching the source of the sound, Prince Callian realized that maybe all this caution wasn't even necessary. Suddenly, a figure burst from the bushes, crying out for help. It was just a tiny elf, absolutely petrified. Callian asked the elf for its name, but the little creature only whimpered that it was hungry. You and I can see how shocked everyone is by the prince's kindness. He gently asks if the elf is looking for food or just lost. The small being replied that it was just hiding, looking completely overwhelmed by pure terror. Callian immediately sensed that there was something very unusual about this entire conversation. A knight asked for orders, and Callian said to feed the elf. Suddenly, he heard another noise coming from the trees. He turned toward the rustling and scolded the elf, saying it should have mentioned if someone was following it. Right then, a man emerged from the shadows of the forest, mounted on a horse. Prince Callian took off his cloak, wrapped it around the shivering elf, and told Kairi to hide her immediately. A knight stepped forward to demand the stranger's identity. The man claimed he was hunting a thief and asked about a strange child. The knight denied seeing anyone like that and ordered the man to leave the area at once. The man noticed Kairi was hiding something and stated he wasn't there to pick a fight with royal knights. He claimed he was only there to find someone and asked to search. Suddenly, mysterious lights appeared deep in the forest. The knight was about to snap back, but the prince cut him off to ask exactly who the man was seeking. The man described a young elf, and surprisingly, Prince Callian gave him full permission to check the entire area right then. Hearing the prince give permission, the little elf became absolutely paralyzed with fear. As the man moved toward Kairi to find the elf, Callian told him not to turn around and just listen. The prince whispered that his own guards wouldn't protect him. The real targets were actually the man himself and the child. He warned that as soon as the child's identity was confirmed, arrows would rain down from that direction. Before he could finish, the man turned around anyway. As he did, the glow in the forest grew dangerously bright. A volley of arrows flew toward him, but every single one was shattered before they could even hit their mark. Prince Callian saved him, slicing through the arrows with his sword and tackling the man to the ground to avoid the archers. Callian then coldly reminded the man that he specifically told him not to turn his head. More arrows fly as a knight screams, "Ambush! This is getting wild," but watch what happens as Mage Hertz prepares his spell. Alright, you and I are diving into a chaotic ambush where a magic shield just deflected a hail of arrows. The knight leader orders a chase, but warns his men not to stray too far. Prince Call thinks the danger is over, lowering his guard just as an enemy spots the perfect opening. Hertz grabs the elf so Kairi can rush over to protect the prince from the shadows. Hertz screams a warning as an assassin lunges, and the prince finally snaps his head toward the threat. Kairi yells for the prince to watch his own back. Watch this closely. The young prince manages to block a heavy blow with nothing but a tiny dagger. He immediately counters with a magic blast to the chest, leaving the attacker screaming on the ground. The knights are stunned. Since when can the young prince use magic like that? Ian rushes over in a panic, relieved that his master is safe and praising their supposed good luck. He asks why the prince moved forward alone when the knights were there for protection. Ian secretly believes the prince only knows basic swordplay and is totally hopeless with magic. Meanwhile, the knights can't stop replaying that epic display of power in their minds. They realize Ian's low opinion doesn't match the lethal skills the young master just displayed. How could someone Ian calls a fragile flower take down an enemy with such brutal efficiency? Moments later, the prince approaches the trembling elf girl and pulls back her hood to talk. He looks serious, but before he can ask about the theft, she blabs that Luca did it. She claims she knows absolutely nothing. She keeps rambling, answering questions before they're even asked, and swearing those villains framed her for the crime. The prince looks completely drained by her nonsense and calls for his mage. He tells Hertz to sort through her frantic chatter since she won't stop talking over him. The mage agrees, even though the elf's sudden happiness catches him off guard. He reports that her name is Sialtian Uria from the distant Harissa forest. She cuts him off, explaining her name means spirit of suppressed words. Hertz continues, saying her friend Luca stole an item from their violent attackers. She got separated from him while the enemies were chasing her. That's when she met the prince, though she still won't stop interrupting his every word. The prince finally gives up on speaking and lets the mage finish the report. Hertz steps away, and the chatty elf follows him to start another conversation. Meanwhile, Ian asks the prince for their next move. Now here's the plan, leave her near the forest and walk away. But you and I know it's not that simple. He refuses to get involved further because their long journey is more important than local trouble. He plans to let the local lord handle the whole investigation. As they plan for dinner, the knight leader asks the prince for a quick word. He found something very suspicious among the items the attackers left behind. The prince unwraps a cloth bundle and is visibly shocked by what he sees inside. Stunned, he asks if the prisoner really had this in his possession. The knight confirms it, and the prince knows exactly what it is. It is the same poison he once ingested. Now, he must confront the prisoner personally. One attacker thinks the prince is just some spoiled brat from a rich family, but he quickly senses there is something more to him. The prince leans in, agreeing that he is indeed an exceptionally precious son. He holds up the poison and demands to know if the man recognizes the deadly substance. The prisoner is clueless. He says everyone had one and he just stole a few extras. He asks what they wanted, no clue. Trust me, things are about to explode. You and I are jumping right back in, the prince demands answers, but the attacker claims those masks hid everything. Callan presses for more details, but the man denies knowing anything else. Still, the prince senses something is off with his behavior. Callan leans in, whispering that this man does not seem like he is protecting these invaders out of some misplaced loyalty. He asks what is really going on and promises to fix the situation if the man just cooperates. The prince asks for his trust. After all, as the elite son of a powerful family, he can handle this. The man is stunned by the young prince's bold attitude. Whispering now, the man reveals his wife is trapped in Hanson Village, and it turns out the prince already knows the place. The prince gives his word that the wife will be safe, then asks exactly what it was the invaders lost. The man describes the item as a clear marble, no bigger than a fingernail. He admits he is not sure what it is, but he heard a priest of Tencel would have to verify its true nature. The young prince realizes they are hunting a sacred relic. Priests of Tencel use these to stand in for their own sacred power. This is why Tencel is desperately trying to hoard every single sacred relic they can find. The prince finally gets why there is so much chaos, but he wonders how these invaders got their hands on that specific poison. That is the lethal poison Secretia's agents carry, meant for a quick end if they ever fail a mission. Pay attention here, the man reveals he got the poison through the White Eagle. He does not know the invaders, but he heard the specific title they call their leader. The prince demands to hear it. Blue Wagtail, the man replies. That name hits the prince like a bolt of lightning. It is one of the birds belonging to Baron's father. He wonders what that person is doing here. Later that day, in Latland territory, the rain begins to pour down relentlessly. Inside, as the man speaks with the prince, he mentions the rain might be a blessing since it stopped them from moving after dinner. Setting his glass down, he says he has waited for this day. Clearly thrilled, the man says this is a massive honor. This is Count Hale Latland, the lord of this territory. Count Hale, still beaming, continues. He says it is as if the heavens themselves are telling him to serve the prince. The prince thinks the count talks way too much, but he recalls his earlier conversation with Ian. He remembers Ian asking if he had any memory of this Count Hale. The count had sent him gifts before, and the prince remembers Hale's name was on the list of those who got their presents sent back. His servant mentioned that while Hale originally backed Prince Randall, he quickly flipped his allegiance to Prince Planche's side 6 years ago during the war. You and I both know an opportunist when we see one, and that is exactly who the prince sent that gift to. Count Hale, still grinning, keeps rambling about how long he has been waiting for the prince to finally arrive. The prince figures Hale talked to Planche last year. Meanwhile, the butler, Malcolm Chadish, looks totally embarrassed by his master's behavior. Hertz enters, asking for permission to speak, saying he has urgent news for the prince. He whispers to the prince that they have successfully captured a messenger pigeon. The prince knows they were trying to tip off Blue Wagtail. No other bird would fly through this dark, pouring rain with such a purpose. Hale asks the mage where he has been on such a cold day and offers him a drink. The prince cuts in, saying they are not here to drink. He needs to know if there is a priest of Tencel nearby. Count Hale knocks over a bottle, smiles an apology, and claims he is just a little bit drunk. He asks what he said something about a priest of Tencel. The count suddenly explodes in rage, asking if the prince is talking about those damned wretches who would never come to a remote place like this. The prince tells him to calm down, but the count just keeps going. He continues ranting about how evil those wretches are. But before he can finish, the prince snaps his fingers and orders him to sleep. The count faceplants onto the table, out cold. Everyone in the room is stunned by what the prince just did. He says he just could not stand the count's rude behavior any longer. Next, we see the prince riding out on his horse. Speaking to Manasil through his ring, the mage asks if the prince is saying he got involved with a secret item and that his life is now in danger. The prince tells Manasil not to worry too much about his retirement plans. Manasil asks just how deep the prince's connections go. The prince replies that he is someone who has never once failed a mission. And trust me, you and I are about to see if the invaders realized he is actually the Prince of Caris. Alright, you and I are jumping right into a mystery that's about to get seriously dangerous for our young prince. Manasil told the prince to track down a Tencel priest currently staying near the Latland region. The mage insisted they needed to uncover what kind of shady deal the secret agent was plotting with those priests. In a quiet tavern, a woman was busy cleaning glasses when Prince Callian suddenly stepped through the door. He greeted her calmly, explaining that the guards outside were simply following his lead. Setting down a glass, the woman told him to relax. She wasn't cruel enough to hurt innocent bystanders. The prince realized she knew exactly who he was. She simply replied, that's why she'd told him to stay away. That's when Callian noticed everyone in the bar was unconscious. Pay attention here, because the woman thinks he's being rash as the prince approaches the counter to join the conversation. She was about to say yes, but then she spotted the intense red aura radiating from the prince's body. This wasn't going to be easy. As Callian smiled, she asked if the elf she'd been hunting was already dead. She explained they'd lost his trail the moment he vanished into the dense forest path. If she'd known this would be such a massive headache, she never would have taken the job in the first place. She hated this situation, but offered a deal if he left now, she would leave the elf child alone forever. Callian grabbed a glass and made his own offer. Answer a few questions, and he would disappear. Why was she hunting a sacred relic? Staring over the rim of his glass, he knew she wasn't a priestess. Looking irritated, she snatched the glass back, complaining that holy relics had become incredibly expensive on the market lately. So, she was selling them. She admitted her day job usually didn't pay the bills well enough. Callian watched her closely and asked if the person buying these sacred relics was currently in Latan. It made no sense to sell them here when it would be much easier to find priests over in Caris. She claimed no one paid better than this specific buyer. Plus, they already had a long-standing business connection. The prince realized a connection like that could only mean one thing: secret agents trading information about keys. To pay for intel on the Blue Ladybug, these agents were using stolen holy relics as currency. You and I can tell that wine isn't just for drinking, as the prince prepares his final, deadliest question. Meanwhile, at the palace, the king asked why the mage was visiting, joking that he felt like a mere informant. Manhwa knew the king would be awake and didn't want to waste time confirming secrets that his majesty was already keeping hidden. He asked exactly how many Tencel priests were in Caris and where they were hiding. The king wondered if Manhwa was asking because he already knew the truth, or if this was just a coincidence. Representatives from Tencel had actually arrived specifically for this situation. Aside from the one priest in the palace, there were 14 others. They wanted to round them all up to ensure no more priests would be requested in the future. The king felt insulted. After celebrating their arrival, they were now acting like Caris was exploiting their holy men. Manhwa noted that Tencel was in trouble. They hid their situation but desperately needed those priests back immediately. The king ordered his men to find the rest and take them away. When asked why he cared, the mage explained that Prince Callian specifically wanted to know where the priests were. The king found this request very strange and demanded to know why the prince was so curious. He wondered why Callian was even asking, since the prince had already arrived at their secret location. Back at the bar, Callian asked if the buyer was Count Hail Latin. Sipping her wine, she simply shrugged. Realizing the situation was complex, the prince hurried back to his horse, knowing the man had been playing dumb. He had hidden the priest while pretending to be completely clueless. By buying relics at a premium, he was funding Secretia's agents. Manhwa agreed that the prince's theory was correct. Callian shouted that they needed to get back to the castle right now. Sensing the sudden urgency, the mage asked if something had gone wrong. Callian realized that when he used magic to put the man to sleep, Count Latin was definitely faking his drunkenness. Stick with me, we're about to find out just how far this betrayal goes as we head back to the palace. Alright, you and I are diving into a palace drama where Ian tells the butler the prince is out walking, while the butler desperately tries to offer an apology. Ian cuts him off, asking if he is simply trying to cover up his own disgusting insolence. Fuming, Ian snaps back, asking since when a mere count's butler has the right to interrogate a prince's private whereabouts. The butler becomes visibly terrified, standing there completely speechless and not knowing how to respond. Ian stays thoughtful, considering the fact that the prince probably hasn't even returned yet. The butler asks again exactly when the prince might be back. Ian finally shouts at him, saying he cannot share that information and he should just leave. At that exact moment, the prince appears at the bedroom door, asking if he can finally get some rest. Both Ian and the butler are startled. Callian then calls his servant totally incompetent. I told you to make a proper excuse and send them away. How hard can that be? Ian quickly apologizes, explaining that the butler was being extremely persistent and that he would handle the situation right now. The prince slams the bedroom door shut quite hard. Outside in the hall, the butler continues apologizing, saying he didn't realize His Highness was resting and that he will leave immediately. The prince leans against the door, feeling relieved. He suddenly realizes he just spoke exactly like a certain person, which leaves a bitter taste in his mouth. Ian enters and notes that the prince returned much earlier than he expected. And he came through the window, no less, the servant adds with surprise. Callian simply says it is a very long story. Callian asks if anyone else was looking for him or if anything suspicious happened. Ian replies it was just that same butler from before. Now watch this, even with a prince exiting through windows, Ian stays totally focused. He remembers His Highness jumping out a window, even though they were on the 3rd floor. Callian just laughs softly and says he understands. The young prince asks why Ian is so angry, noting that he wasn't nearly this irritated back at the palace. Ian explains it is because the butler refused to listen. Even after being told the prince was out walking, the man kept pestering him about the return time. Callian finds that reason very strange. You and I can see the butler was far more interested in the timing of the return than where the prince had gone. A short while later, the prince speaks with the mage, noting that the count already suspects they are in the middle of a secret investigation. He adds that they were definitely right to assume the count was not actually drunk. The mage asks why Callian believes the count was faking it. The prince explains the sacred relic exchange with the Blue Moreta was scheduled for today. The wine was just an excuse for the count to slip away, but the plan failed when Callian put him to sleep. And once he realized I had left the castle, he sent his butler to investigate me, the prince says. The mage understands and then asks, why does he want a sacred relic so badly? Callian explains, Hale wants to trade it for influence in Tencel, Prince Randall's mother's homeland. The mage adds, while keeping ties with Randall, he flirts with Planche and even sends secret gifts to our prince, Callian. The prince finishes, he sold info to a secret agent from Secretia. He is cunning. Helping Solace, who was being hunted, was only the start. The hunter tracking her down gave me the Blue Moreta's name. That's how I discovered Hale was smuggling relics to Tencel specifically to flatter Randall through that secret group. If none of this is a coincidence, the prince pauses. The rain will not stop until tomorrow. And since I am stuck here, I will deal with this traitor. In his room, Hale breaks a glass in a rage. He realizes Callian would be a problem the moment the prince returned the gifts. Hale is certain Callian used magic, since only enchantments cause such a deep sleep. His plans are a total mess because of the prince acting arrogant just because Manhwa is on his side. How dare someone with common blood think they are on the same level as royalty? What a choice. Why didn't she just kill him before all this? Hale wonders. I worked so hard to charm the nobles. I spent a literal fortune on Marquis Bryson. They promised me fertile lands in Caris, but because of Callian, everything changed. Hale snaps. Right then, the butler enters, asking the count for permission. Hale throws himself onto the sofa and asks if the butler managed to speak with the Blue Merida yet. No, not yet, the butler replies. Furious, Count Hale hurls a glass at the butler's head, calling him a total imbecile. Hale snaps, complaining about the rain and the half-blood staying here. Stick with me, we're reaching the best part. The terrified butler asks if they should postpone the secret transaction. All right, you and I are about to see this arrogant count absolutely lose his mind with rage. He barks for a maid to fetch his clothes, swearing he is going to teach Prince Callian a lesson in manners. By the next day, Callian is just sitting there, calmly enjoying his lunch like nothing happened. Count Hale watches him, fuming that the boy acts so casual. In Caris, his title demands respect at least, that is what he thinks. The nobility would never stand for magic being used against him, and Hale is banking on that political weight. Foolish little prince, your royal blood cannot save you. Soon, you will be on your knees, begging for my mercy. Putting on a mask, Hale offers a fake apology for last night. Callian just shrugs it off like it was nothing. When the count asks about an enchantment, Callian just cuts him off. He admits he put Hale to sleep with magic since the man was becoming totally unbearable. With a cold, mocking smile, Callian tells him not to sweat it. It must be his first time hosting royalty, right? He probably just had a little stage fright. Hale forces a grin, but inside, pure fury. The prince is acting like all of this is the count's own fault. Suddenly, Callian mentions he is tired of investigating the guy who tried to kill him. Hale asks if he means the prisoner. Callian nods, casually mentioning they have already gathered quite a bit of interesting info. The count freezes. He needs to know exactly what they found. Now pay attention here, Callian mentions a specific bird, and the count literally spits his wine everywhere. The butler rushes over with a cloth, but Hale snaps at him to back off. He is right in the middle of a high-stakes conversation. Callian says he still needs to dig through the finer details, but surely the count wants to know what happens on his own lands. Hale stands up, acting heroic, saying he will help catch whoever attacked royalty on his watch. You think I will let you ruin my territory? Just you wait, little prince. I will find your weakness and tear you down. Suddenly, a knight arrives, asking for a private word with the prince. Watching them whisper, the count decides he needs to kick this prince out of his territory as fast as possible. But Callian breaks his train of thought, saying the message is actually for the count himself. Caught off guard, Hale follows the prince to a dark, damp place that looks exactly like a prison cell. The count is visibly disgusted. How dare Callian bring a man of his stature to such a filthy hole? Callian knows exactly what Hale is thinking. He can see the arrogance dripping off of him. But everything has already been set. The trap is laid, and we flash back to the night before in this very dungeon. The man behind the bars is desperate. He asks if his wife is safe. Callian reassures him. His family is fine. The prince gave his word, and he always keeps his promises. The man wonders why the prince is here. Callian is blunt by now. The man should have been executed for his crimes. Attacking royalty is a death sentence. As soon as this investigation wraps up, he is a dead man. Even if he survived the executioner, his life would be a nightmare. No proper doctors, no care, nothing. His wounded arm would rot away and kill him slowly. The prisoner asks what the catch is. Watch closely, the prince is about to offer him a way out. The man is completely stunned. Callian promises him a new life in a peaceful land, far away from this territory, but there is a catch: he has to help him first. In exchange, his only punishment will be losing his arm instead of his entire life. A fair trade. Fear washes over the man's face, but the prince does not blink. He is completely serious about this deal. The man agrees and asks what to do. Returning to the present, he reveals that he only called for the count because Marikita is actually a secret agent from Secretia. She was selling stolen goods to a regular client she had been meeting with for a very long time. Callian notes how strange that is. A relationship like that? It only works if someone is a double agent, a traitor selling out their own country for profit. Do you agree, Count? Callian asks. Hale is trembling now, his face pale as he struggles to find words. Callian stays silent. He is just waiting for the Count to panic and give him the final proof. Later at the palace, the butler is on his knees, crying and begging the prince for forgiveness. He swears he was just a puppet, only following the orders his master gave him. That is where we leave it. You and I definitely do not want to miss what happens next. Alright, you and I are diving into a web of betrayal that goes way deeper than we first thought. The prince looks at the butler and asks, "Are you a priest of Tencel?" The butler is completely stunned. Callian keeps pushing. accusing him of being the one behind the illegal relic trade. And that submissive act with the Count? It was all a cover, because the Count discovered his dark secret long ago. The butler reveals that if Tencel finds out about the relics, they will execute him the moment he returns home. Callan is genuinely surprised to find the butler is the one selling them, so the Count wasn't the buyer after all. He demands to know who exactly the butler sold those relics to. He sold them to Queen Selalisi's brother, Viscount Ren and Brizon, the butler confesses. He is gifting those relics to Tencel. Renom Brizon is trying to forge a secret connection with them. This means he betrayed Plunch to side with Randall, turning his back on his family who wanted Plunch as heir. Now pay attention, because the prince just realized he caught a much bigger fish than he expected in this trap. The mage asks what the prince plans to do next. This is going to cause a massive stir. He suggests they discuss it with Roma immediately, and the mage agrees with the plan. Callan tells Manisil to write a letter to Count Hale Latin. But first, he orders his servants to treat the prisoner's mangled arm kept underground. The wound is severe and will take a very long time to heal completely. It is better to amputate. Then, he shows them the poison, telling them to give it to the man. The knight agrees to the task. Meanwhile, Kyrie is sent to Hansen village to find the man's wife and move her to a safe location. As the man takes the medicine, an elf girl bursts in with Hina, totally unannounced. She is interrupting the prince right in the middle of his room. She begs him not to scold Hina before running off to play with the little bird. The prince just sighs, thinking that this really is not his problem at all. She gets close to the bird and starts playing with it. Ian asks if he is keeping the pigeon, but Callan is firm he is definitely not doing that. Ian realizes he's waiting for the right moment to return it. Hina joins in, playing with the bird too. They both just watch the girls. The prince promises Hina a bird of her own later, as he must return this specific pigeon tonight. Hina worries Merlin won't like a bird in the room, but the prince just gives a small, pitying smile. He asks Hina to release the bird after dinner and tells her not to forget to leave the window open. Hina sounds very doubtful. The prince is expecting a guest. Hours later, the room is finally empty, and everyone has gone their separate ways. Only the prince remains, reading his book, when he hears a strange noise coming from the window ledge. He closes his book, noting the visitor is early. The stranger admits they were moved by what he wrote in the letter. You and I both know threats like this usually end in blood, and this time is no different for our prince. Mariquita Azul has arrived, and she wants to know why he is threatening her like this. Callan shows her proof of Hale's relic trade and info selling. He promises to keep her secret if she just gives him the evidence he needs tonight. The woman stays silent, just staring. He asks if that is going to be her final answer. She says yes. She hates complex relationships. Suddenly, she fires a barrage of magical projectiles straight at his head. The prince is stunned to see magical orbs flying his way. He raises a magical shield. He remembers her as a sword user, but these projectiles are slamming into the walls with real explosive force. Outside, the knights are in a panic. They know there's an intruder inside the prince's private chambers. Callan locks the door and tells them to stay out. He asks the woman if she really came here with the intention of killing him. The woman advances, telling him she has nothing else to say. She draws her sword and lunges, but the prince manages to block the attack. His iron sword is no match for her aura. He needs a quick finish without using his own. He finally manages to land a solid blow on her. She retreats, using her blade to protect herself. He finally disarms her, but when he least expects it, she pulls out one last magical orb to attack him. She hurls the orb. It's too fast. He has to use his aura. He imbues his sword and slices the magical orb clean in half. His sword shatters. You and I definitely need to see what happens next. Seeing him slice through a magical orb like butter, the woman asks if he's actually a master swordsman. Silence falls between them as the prince considers his next move. All right, stick with me. Things get intense when the prince drops her real name, Aya, leaving her stunned. Before she can ask how he knows her identity, he grabs her face. While Aya struggles, the prince forces her mouth open to check something. Peering inside, he notes the poison that should have been there is missing. That's definitely not part of the plan. Callian demands she spill everything she knows. Aya counters, asking if she'll be set free if she talks. Callian dismisses her, noting she doesn't seem like the determined type he's heard about. Internally, he wonders if she was always this way or if something changed her drastically. Aya doubles down, insisting that letting her walk away is his best option. She points out that a master swordsman using a cheap guard's blade is clearly trying to hide his true power from everyone. She threatens that if he doesn't release her, she'll tell every knight outside exactly what she just saw him do. In a different timeline, Marika Azul was a warrior fiercely loyal to Secretia. Now pay attention, he knows she was a master swordsman back then, but this version, it's just not her. Grabbing her collar, he tells her that if she's begging him to live, she shouldn't have died in front of him before. Aya is frozen in shock as silence takes over. Letting go of her shirt, he warns her not to expect any favors in return for talking. Her secret isn't worth her life. He tells her to provide evidence, and maybe he'll skip the harsh interrogation part. But if she refuses, the White Eagle will handle the questioning. Just the name alone sends a shiver down Aya's spine. Elsewhere, Count Hale is fuming and cursing. He's wondering where on earth Malcolm is, since the man is nowhere to be found. Malcolm had been asking questions about recent events and the specific contents of a certain letter. The letter mentions the Count needs a representative. It says Queen Sachi has been briefed on exactly what he's been selling, so there's supposedly nothing to fear. This mysterious letter was penned by none other than Elon Manisil. The Count panics, wondering if the mage knows about the sacred relics. If he sent that letter, he definitely knows everything. He grumbles, annoyed that a commoner prince and a mage think they can threaten him. It's frustrating having to play nice. They probably expect him to come crawling in fear, but they've seriously underestimated who they're dealing with. You and I both know villains like this always have a backup plan. He steps into a room overflowing with hidden gold. Looking at his hoard, he wishes he'd stolen more. He brushes it off and heads toward a safe, muttering to himself. He has something much better than gold anyway. He opens a small box, revealing it's packed with powerful sacred relics. With these relics, he's looking at a massive fortune. But as he's gloating, Hertz starts shimmering into view right behind him. As he goes to close the box, it literally vanishes from his grip. He spins around to see Hertz holding his precious treasure. He stammers, asking if that was invisibility magic. Hertz just nods, revealing he's the mage serving Prince Callian. Hertz sarcastically thanks him for handing over all the evidence himself. It really couldn't have been any easier than this. He tells the Count not to worry, he'll make sure to report everything to that cunning mage and the commoner prince. Hertz brings the relics straight to Callian. He's also managed to snag all the leaked intel from Kairs and the Count's illegal trade papers. Grinning, the prince thanks his mage. With this move, the trap for his enemies is finally almost ready to snap shut. Suddenly, Ian bursts through the door. He shouts for the prince to look outside. A massive fleet of knights in golden armor is charging toward them. Looking out the window, the prince recognizes King Kaela's own personal knight. That's where we leave it. Why are the king's guards here? You'll want to see what happens next.